Chapter 1568. After becoming a demigod, Consort used demonic and immortal energy had become much denser. However, right now, Longyu didn't know how to describe the density of her energy. After all, Longyu hadn't become a demigod yet. He didn't really understand some of the terms used in the demigod realm. However, at the same time that she leveled up, the other new demigods also leveled up. The 4 new demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the 5 new demigods of the Silk race surrounded Consort used group of 5 from all directions. All kinds of attacks came one after another. One of the new demigods of the Cloud Shell race was covered in terrifying flames. He casually waved a powerful fire elemental revelation level character and swept it towards Frost. Frost's divinized god art instantly exploded. She had already obtained 6 ice essences and had absorbed 6 of them into her natural god art fruits. Now, 3 of her god arts had become divinized as well. With the 2 stacked together, her strength had increased to an unimaginable level. A blizzard swept out of Frost's body and instantly enveloped her and the space around her. In this blizzard, the Cloud Shell race demigod that had activated the fire elemental revelation level character couldn't do anything to her. The fire elemental revelation level character quickly dissipated in the blizzard. Frost wasn't harmed in the slightest. On the other side, the 2 new demigods of the Silk race teamed up and attacked Imperial Wind. One of the Silk race used a shadow elemental technique, while the other used a light elemental technique. The 2 powers, one white and one black, clashed with each other. But because they clashed with each other, when they combined, they were able to explode with such terrifying power. Both the Shadow Elemental and Light Elemental Divine characters were revealed level characters. What Yifeng was using was also a deified god art. He moved, and countless hurricanes and tornadoes appeared. These hurricanes and tornadoes enveloped the Shadow Element and Light Element Silk race beings, Shadow Element and Light Element Silk race beings. This was the elemental power of the wind, elemental divine characters. Although it was rare, its power was extremely terrifying. The 3 kinds of energy mixed together, causing the space in the area to almost explode. Imperial Wind and the 2 demigods of the Silk race were directly forced out of the main battlefield, and a small battlefield was opened up. Those who could become demigods, be it the aliens in front of them or the Imperial Wind Consort Use team, had all grasped the Revelation runes. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy for them to kill 3 opponents in a row in the final chaotic battle in the 5th zone. A Revelation Divine rune was the most basic requirement. As for the more advanced Eternity Divine runes, they could only be obtained in the eroding Moon Ancient domain. Very few people could comprehend them in the eroding Moon Ancient domain like Longyu did. Right now, Longyu's mind has already been engraved with the mysterious runes recorded on the Greystone. Therefore, his comprehension speed towards all kinds of powers has already surpassed ordinary people. Moreover, there aren't many similar rewards in the entire Eclipse Moon Ancient region. Even if there were other mysterious runes, once they were engraved in his mind, they would produce different effects. Apart from Longyu, there was basically no one else who could comprehend the Eternity Divine runes in a short period of time. But there were always exceptions to everything. Right now, Longyu felt the aura of the Eternity Divine runes, and the scene exploded with shock. That aura actually belonged to Long Zai Tian. With the Eternity Divine runes on his body, Long Zai Tian's figure instantly grew, turning into a 10-meter-tall giant. Golden dragons circled around him as he faced off against the 2 demigods of the Silk race by himself. The golden dragons circled around Long Zai Tian. Whenever the enemy's power approached him, it would be completely devoured by the golden dragons and turned into Long Zai Tian's own power. The golden dragons were one of Long Zai Tian's divinized divine abilities. With the help of the Eternity Divine runes, Long Zai Tian was the most relaxed person present. He faced off against the 2 demigods of the Silk race by himself and completely suppressed them. Without a doubt, among the 5 of Consort Use group, Long Zai Tian's strength could be said to be among the best. Before entering the eroding moon ancient region, everyone was about the same. But after leaving the eroding moon ancient region, there was a clear gap between them. Of course, people like Consort Yu, Frost, and the others had obtained some treasures in the eroding moon ancient region, but they hadn't had the time to turn those treasures into their own combat strength. Right now, they didn't seem to be as good as Long's Ition. If they could make it out alive, the situation would definitely change after a while. Consort Yu's demonic immortal energy allowed her to fend off the two demigods of the Cloud Shell race by herself. However, it was rather difficult to defend against them. These two demigods of the Cloud Shell race had respectively grasped the eternity, divine runes of the fire and ice elements. When they worked together, they were quite powerful. It was relatively easy for Consort Yu to fend off one of them with her demonic immortal energy, but when two came at her at the same time, it was rather difficult for her to fend them off. The remaining Lang Qingshuang had long since transformed into a giant green wolf. This was his demonic body. At this moment, he was constantly howling and relying on the power of the sound element divine runes to fend off the demigod of the Cloud Shell race and the demigod of the Silk race. In a chaotic battle between Lang Qingshuang and these two demigods, it wasn't exactly 1 versus 2. The demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race did not completely trust each other, so the pressure on Lang Qingshuang was much less than that of the others. Of course, less pressure did not mean that there was no danger. On the contrary, Lang Qingshuang was actually the more dangerous one. This was because the demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race were still suspicious of each other. If Lang Qingshuang was even slightly injured, then the demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race would definitely kill Lang Qingshuang first without any hesitation. Long Yu was still approaching. He did not teleport 10,000 feet in one go. Instead, he maintained a distance of 300 feet per teleportation. At first, he really wanted to hurry over, but then he discovered that Consort Yu and the others were actually doing well. They were not being suppressed by the 9 demigods of the alien races, which was a blessing in disguise. This was especially so for Long Ziyin. He actually had such great power that he was able to suppress the 2 demigods of the Silk race. This was truly out of Long Yu's expectations. However, if this continued, it would not be a good idea. After all, although Consort Yu and the others could fend them off for now, they could not fight back at all. It would be extremely difficult for them to kill any one of them. Long Yu had to go up and help. If the golden flame giant that he had transformed and entered the battlefield, he would definitely seize the opportunity to instantly kill one of the alien races. At this moment, Long Yu could sense which of the 4 demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the 5 demigods of the Silk race was carrying a treasure from the void. This allowed him to confirm the target that he needed to instantly kill. Apart from helping Consort Yu and the others escape successfully, Long Yu's goal in this battle was to obtain as many treasures as possible. Therefore, if he could choose, he would naturally choose the demigods of the alien races who were carrying treasures. When Long Yu was less than 3,000 feet away from the battlefield, he discovered that the battle closest to him was actually between Lang Qingshuang and a demigod of the Silk race and a demigod of the Cloud Shell race. At this time, it was too late to take a detour, and there was also no need to do so. The demigod of the Silk race was carrying a treasure. If Long Yu could kill it, then that treasure would drop. If this treasure was obtained by one of Consort Yu and the others, then one of them would be able to leave at any time. In any case, right now, they had 2 treasures on them. One of them had killed a demigod of the Cloud Shell race. Consort Yu had a treasure, and so did Frost. As for who had killed the demigod of the Cloud Shell race, Long Yu didn't know. In any case, if he killed the Silk race now, Lang Qingshuang would very likely obtain that treasure. If that happened, then it would be very beneficial to the overall situation. Without any hesitation, Long Yu flew directly towards Lang Qingshuang's battlefield. The appearance of the golden flame giant caused Lang Qingshuang, the demigod of the Silk race, and the demigod of the Cloud Shell race, to become nervous. At this time, the 3 of them actually formed a simple alliance and stood in 3 different positions. Each of these 3 positions could immediately attack Long Yu. This Lang Qingshuang. Forget it, there's nothing I can do. Long Yu felt a bit awkward, but he couldn't reveal his identity as Long Yu right now. This was because the Golden Flame Giant couldn't speak or send out telekinesis. He had no way of notifying anyone else. No matter what, he had to get rid of the demigod of the Silk Race first. He raised his golden fist and flashed over the last 300 meters, crashing toward the demigod of the Silk Race. When Lang Qingshuang saw this, he didn't rashly attack the Golden Flame Giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Instead, he retreated a bit. It was already difficult for him to deal with 2 demigods working together. Seeing this situation, he was naturally very happy. In the beginning, he had subconsciously become wary of Long Yu, which was why he had stood with the 2 demigods. But now that he saw the Golden Flame Giant attack the demigod of the Silk Race, there was no need for him to get involved. Lang Qingshuang naturally knew that the Silk Race member had a treasure on her. Thus, he didn't retreat too far away. Instead, he paced around the Silk Race and the Golden Flame Giant. So smart. Long Yu couldn't help but praise him inwardly. Then, the golden fist landed on one end of the demigod of the Silk Race. There was no telling whether that end was the core of the demigod's power or the head, but the Golden Flame Divine power directly smashed it into pieces. One had to know that this was the Golden Flame Divine power. The density of power already surpassed that of these new demigods. Not to mention that the Golden Flame Giant was actually so strong. But the demigod wasn't killed directly. The life force of demigods was very strong, and most importantly, they had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. Chapter 1569. The Silk Demigod's head had been blown off by Long Yu's punch, but the destruction of its head was unknown. White light radiated from its body. This was the power of some kind of revelation-level divine text of light. At the same time, a godly absolute beginning item flew out. It was a godly absolute beginning item in the shape of a stone, and it radiated an extremely strong aura of life. The power of the divine text of life. After the stone flew out, it completely disintegrated and turned into the purest power of the revelation-level divine text of life. It melted into the body of the Silk Race demigod whose head had been blown off, and its head was reconstructed once again. It was just like how Long Yu had cultivated the devil Dustheart. Even if its head was directly blown off like this, it could instantly reconstruct it. It was impossible to cause any fatal damage to it. But now, the Silk Demigod had clearly sensed how terrifying Long Yu was after taking this blow from Long Yu. It actually chose to retreat without any hesitation. Apart from the divine text of life that was still glowing white above its head, the white light that indicated that it would retreat from the eroding moon ancient region after 10 breaths also flashed. This situation shocked the other demigods around. This golden flame giant was actually so strong that it could scare the Silk Demigod into retreating with just one punch. This was undoubtedly a warning to the remaining Silk Demigods. At the same time, both the Cloud Shell clan and Consort Yu were extremely wary of this golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. The Silk Demigod definitely wouldn't choose to retreat so easily. Because its companions were still here, it wouldn't choose to retreat unless it was absolutely necessary. But now, white light was flashing above its head. In other words, it felt that it would die if it didn't retreat. This was the only possibility that could scare the Silk Demigod into immediately retreating. This also showed how strong the Golden Flame giant was. Lang Qingshuang was now a little hesitant. Should he go up and prepare to covet the treasures on the Silk Demigod? Right now, he was in an excellent position. The Silk Race member chose to retreat as far away from the Golden Flame giant as he did so. This direction happened to be where Lang Qingshuang was. He could totally block the Silk Race demigod's escape route, but if he did that, the Golden Fiery Giant would very likely target him next. In that case, it would be impossible for Wolf Blue Frost to retreat, even if he wanted to, because he had no treasures on him and he had never killed any alien demigods. he was not qualified to quit. Because of this, Lang Qingshuang was a little hesitant. However, Long Yu didn't care what Lang Qingshuang was thinking. He simply chased after the silk race demigod, raised his fist, and punched at the other end of the silk race. Terrifying golden flame god power slammed into the silk race again. Long Yu didn't show that he could teleport more than 1,000 feet, because he was chasing after the silk race being. It didn't matter if he or Lang Qingshuang killed the silk race being. The next moment, the silk race actually left behind an afterimage where it had been standing. No, it wasn't an afterimage. Instead, it looked more like it had shed its shell, like a viper shedding its skin, leaving behind a layer of snake skin. This silk race had used some sort of technique to cause the layer of skin that it had left behind to erupt with a powerful tearing force, binding the entire golden flame giant. The silk race member itself continued to flee into the distance with a white light above its head. One could sense that after the silk race member had chosen to shed its skin, it seemed to have become much weaker. Killing it would undoubtedly be much easier. Its direction of escape began to diverge from Lang Qingshuang's. This also gave Lang Qingshuang a message. This silk race member was afraid of him. Lang Qingshuang glanced at the golden flame giant. The golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into was temporarily entangled by the silk race's shedding skin and couldn't escape. This was the perfect opportunity for him to kill the silk race member. Of course, this was an opportunity that Long Yu had intentionally created for Lang Qingshuang. If he wanted to, he could break through the entanglement of the shedding skin at any time. After all, the golden flame divine power was very strong and could easily burn the shedding skin to ashes. But he didn't. Instead, he pretended to be trapped and waited for Lang Qingshuang to kill the silk race demigod. That way, no matter what the situation was like before, Consort Yu and the others would definitely be able to leave safely. Long Yu thought that since the silk race member was already so heavily injured, Lang Qingshuang shouldn't have a problem dealing with it, right? Very soon, Lang Qingshuang caught up to the silk race demigod, just as Long Yu had expected. But what happened next made Long Yu's heart sink. This was because the silk race demigod had actually reserved some extremely powerful techniques and hadn't used them yet. The silk race demigod had actually taken out a quasi-divine source item in the shape of an iron lock, a modified quasi-divine source item. Clearly, this was the treasure that the silk race demigod had obtained in this space. At this moment, it actually used it directly. This quasi-divine source item in the shape of an iron lock completely entangled Lang Qingshuang's main body as soon as it appeared. Then, the iron lock actually exploded with an extremely dense power that was even stronger than the power of a demigod. This situation completely stunned Lang Qingshuang. He didn't expect this at all. The silk race actually had a final trump card. This quasi-divine source item in the shape of an iron lock contained an extremely powerful sealing power, and the density of the power was extremely high. It completely suppressed the power inside Lang Qingshuang's body. He had also obtained a quasi-divine source item, and he had also awakened a level 12 absolute beginning divine source item. At this moment, he used all of these techniques without any hesitation. The quasi-divine source item was something that looked like a bamboo stick connected together. Now that he activated it, it immediately shot out like a goddess scattering flowers. His absolute beginning divine source item was a wolf fang sword. After it flew out of his little world, it directly exploded with a level 12 awakening skill. 5 wolves devouring the sun. 5 giant wolf demon phantoms appeared in the nearby void and suddenly emitted a terrifying aura. This was a level 12 absolute beginning divine source item awakening skill of a demigod. The 5 giant wolf demon phantoms immediately bit onto the iron lock that was entangled around Lang Qingshuang's body. The iron lock glowed red and tightly trapped Lang Qingshuang's main body. He couldn't use any of the power inside his body, nor could he use any of his natural techniques. He could only rely on quasi-divine source items and absolute beginning divine source items. The 5 wolves devouring the sun and the string of bamboo sticks almost completely destroyed the modified quasi-divine source items, but they were still a little short and couldn't completely get him out of his predicament. Then, the Silk Race demigod released a burst of white light. This wave of white light covered almost everything in the surrounding space, and then landed on Lang Qingshuang's body with a loud rumble. This was an attack that targeted the mind and soul. There was no suspense. After all of Lang Qingshuang's power was sealed, he could only endure the opponent's soul attack. He had also cultivated some kind of secret martial arts technique that could block part of the soul attack. But now the opponent's attack was just too strong. It was so strong that even Long Yu couldn't react in time. Long Yu ignited his golden flame divine power and escaped from the shed skin. He wanted to teleport over to help Lang Qingshuang, but it was already too late. Lang Qingshuang's entire body was covered in white light. Without any pain, Lang Qingshuang's mind and soul were instantly destroyed. His physical body was left, but it was immediately taken back by the eroding moon ancient domain. The golden flame giant that Long Yu turned into didn't stop. Right now, Lang Qingshuang's death was already a foregone conclusion. He couldn't change it, and he didn't want to see more people die. Whether it was Consort Yu, Frost, Imperial Wind, or even Long Zaition, Long Yu didn't want to see any of them die. The fiery giant arrived abruptly and flashed 7,000 meters away, reaching the demigod of the Silk Clan who was struggling for its last breath. Then, the fist burning with golden flame divine power smashed down towards the Silk Race demigod. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the elementary modified quasi-god source artifact was directly locked onto Long Yu's body, causing his entire body's strength to enter a sealed state. This lock glowed red, and its sealing effect on power was terrifying. Its suppression power surpassed that of a normal demigod, and it wasn't far off from Long Yu's golden flame divine power. This made it so that Long Yu couldn't even use his golden flame divine power. He could only watch as the Silk Race was teleported out of the eroding moon ancient domain when the time was up. At the same time, the lock-type divine source item was also teleported out. As a treasure that the Silk Race had obtained, it was sent out. Long Yu cursed in his heart. This Silk Race wasn't as simple as it had been before. It had managed to learn how to use this divine source item in such a short period of time, and it had used all sorts of methods to trap the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. It had even killed Lang Qingshuang before leaving. With such intelligence, no wonder he was a true demigod. It could only be said that although Lang Qingshuang had stepped into the demigod realm, he had too few trump cards. Compared to a true expert, he still couldn't fight back. It was just like the 7 demigods of the human race and the demon race. If they were asked to deal with the super demigods of the machine race, the 6-winged race, and the sword race, they definitely wouldn't be able to defeat them, because their background was different and their opponents were stronger. For Long Yu, this was a complete accident. If he hadn't pretended to be trapped by the molting, he would still have had time to help Lang Qingshuang. Although this would expose that he was on the side of the human race and the demon race, it was still better than losing a demigod, right? Every demigod was an extremely precious treasure for the human race and the demon race. Chapter 1570. After the accident with Lang Qingshuang, Long Yu decided to use his full strength. Previously, he was still scheming here and there in order to obtain as many treasures as possible. But now, it seemed that if he continued to scheme, even Concubine Yu and the others might encounter an unexpected accident. It had to be known that these were all demigod experts. Every single one of them was a top genius of their race. They were definitely not weaker than Consort Yu and the others. Lang Qingshuang had died completely because Long Yu had underestimated these new demigods of alien races. It turned out that none of them were to be trifled with. Long Yu would not let something like this happen a second time. Even if it was exposed that he had teamed up with the humans and demons, so what? In any case, he was in the form of a golden flame giant now. It was impossible for the other party to know his true identity unless he encountered the golden, six-winged being. Only then would some information be exposed. Right now, he was only facing the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race. At the end of the day, these two races were not very strong. At least, they could not compare to the Machine race, the Sword race, and the Six-winged race. Long Yu did not see any cultivators of the Cloud Shell race or the Silk race in the space where he had obtained the God Seal of Fire. This also meant that Long Yu did not need to be afraid of them. Kill! Without any hesitation, Long Yu charged toward the closest Cloud Shell race member after the Silk race member disappeared from his sight. The Cloud Shell race member that had attacked Lang Qingshuang with the Silk race member. Seeing that Long Yu's flame giant was approaching, the Cloud Shell race member hurriedly fled toward the main group. This Cloud Shell race member did not have the right to choose to retreat. Long Yu did not show any mercy. The next moment, he teleported 8,000 feet away and appeared in front of the Cloud Shell race member. The demigod of the Cloud Shell race was shocked. Just now, he had discovered that this golden flame giant could actually break through the teleportation limit of 1,000 feet in the eroding moon ancient region. He already had a bad feeling about this, and now he felt that a great disaster was about to befall him. Thankfully, the other two demigods of the Cloud Shell family directly gave up on attacking Concubine Yu and came to reinforce the demigods of the Cloud Shell family. 3 against 1. This time, the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell family seemed to have noticed something about Long Yu. Ever since the fiery giant appeared, it had only been waving its fists non-stop. As long as one was agile enough, one could totally dodge such attacks. Therefore, the 3 Cloud Shell demigods wanted to work together to kill Long Yu. Unfortunately, how could Consort Yu let her opponent slip away just like that? Since they wanted to deal with the flame giant together, Consort Yu was happy to help the flame giant kill the 3 Cloud Shell race beings. Or rather, she only needed to kill one of them. Now that Lang Qingshuang was dead, although Consort Yu was a little depressed, she still had to fight for the remaining 4 to escape. Now, he only lacked a head or a treasure. You guys go first. At this time, Long Zai Tian roared. He could see how powerful the fiery giant was and did not want Consort Yu and the others to take the risk. Thus, he wanted Consort Yu and the others to escape first. When Long Yu heard Long Zai Tian's roar, he knew that the 3 people in the dojo apart from Long Zai Tian had the right to leave this place. Since that was the case, as long as Long Zai Tian obtained a treasure or killed an opponent, the remaining 4 people from the human race and the demon race could all leave. However, it was clear that Consort Yu did not listen to Long Zai Tian. She continued to chase after the 2 demigods of the Cloud Shell family. She had a feeling that the fiery giant in front of her was here to help her. This feeling was definitely not groundless. From the fiery giant's actions just now and its behavior after Lang Qingshuang's death, it was very likely that the fiery giant was connected to the human race and the demon race. This fiery giant was undoubtedly special. After all, it could directly teleport a maximum distance of 10,000 feet, which was 10 times what ordinary demigods could do in the eroding moon ancient region. This special characteristic just happened to correspond to Long Yu's special characteristic. Long Yu had participated in this deathmatch segment. Consort Yu was certain that she had even been thinking about how the eroding moon ancient region had arranged for Long Yu after the deathmatch segment began. It was possible that he had followed them to fight. However, after entering, she had waited for an hour for Long Yu, but he was nowhere to be seen. Thus, Consort Yu was very certain that the eroding moon ancient region had other arrangements for Long Yu. Now that the fiery giant had appeared and combined with its various behaviors, Consort Yu could not help but guess that this fellow could be Long Yu. This possibility was not high. However, Consort Yu could not help but think in this direction. Perhaps it could be said that it was a woman's intuition. After all, she was very familiar with Long Yu, and they understood each other quite a bit. The fiery giant in front of her really did make Consort Yu see a bit of Long Yu's shadow. No matter what, Consort Yu had decided to work with the fiery giant to kill the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell race. Since she had the bold idea that the fiery giant was Long Yu, she naturally had to think of a way to verify it. If it was true, then it was very likely that she could help Long Yu in some way. On the other hand, Frost and Imperial Wind had a treasure on them, and the latter had killed a demigod of the Cloud Shell race, so they both had the right to leave. After hearing Long Zaition shout, a white light appeared above their heads, which meant that they would be transported out in 10 breaths of time. Consort Yu did not leave. She charged towards the 2 demigods of the Cloud Shell race. Demonic immortal chi condensed and actually formed 9 shining black and white stars in the air. This aura was actually a god's martial skill. From the looks of it, Consort Yu had also obtained many benefits in the eroding moon ancient region and had learned many techniques. The 9 brilliant stars was the god's martial skill that Consort Yu had obtained. Now that she was using it for the first time, although she had only cultivated it to the minor mastery realm, it still filled the entire field with a destructive aura. The 9 shining black and white stars directly surrounded the 3 Cloud Shell race members. A terrifying power instantly exploded, and the black and white gas instantly corroded the bodies of the 3 Cloud Shell race members. Even Long Yu stopped. The power of a demigod combined with a god's martial skill was definitely in existence that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Although Long Yu was very sure that his golden flamed giant body could withstand it, there was no need for him to try. He had to pay attention at all times to see if a demigod of the Cloud Shell clan would suddenly go on a rampage or use some powerful technique to threaten Concubine Yu. To be honest, it would be fine if Lang Qing Shuang died. At the very least, Long Yu did not recognize her. But if Consort Yu died here, he probably would not be able to forgive himself for the rest of his life. It had to be known that he and Consort Yu were inextricably linked. The only reason he was able to have what he had today was because Consort Yu had carved the mark of the dragon of the 9 underworlds into his chest from the very beginning. Furthermore, Long Yu still had a question that he had not asked Consort Yu clearly. Back then, why had Consort Yu chosen Long Yu to be a chess piece in the 9 underworlds realm? Long Yu was certain that his coming from Earth to this world had nothing to do with Consort Yu. This was because Consort Yu did not have the ability to pull people from a completely different time and space. But Consort Yu had sensed that he was different. Back then, she had gone to the divine battle world in the 9 underworlds realm and carved the mark of the 9 underworlds on his chest when he was a child. This was a little thought-provoking. No matter what, Long Yu would not let Consort Yu die. When the power of the 9 brilliant stars burst out, the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell race each used their own techniques, trying to block this terrifying god's martial skill. At this moment, Long Yu seemed to see the scene of the Black Tiger demigod and the dragon-winged demigod fighting against the other 3 demigods on the alien race's battlefield again. Right now, Consort Yu and the demigods of the Cloud Shell race were already at the same level as the Black Tiger demigod and the ostentatious demigod, except that they had fewer divinized techniques than them. Their basic strength was not much different. The destructive power of the various techniques that they used could already be on par with each other. One of the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell race activated the Berserker symbol and created a golden Berserker defense shield. This turned out to be a god's martial skill as well. However, it was only at the beginner level and could not block Consort Yu's 9 brilliant stars. But then, in the small world of the other demigod of the Cloud Shell race, 3 pieces of absolute beginning quality appeared. This guy actually had 3 pieces of absolute beginning quality. 2 of the pieces of absolute beginning quality condensed defensive barriers and appeared under the golden Berserker defense shield, forming 3 layers of defense and completely blocking the terrifying destructive power of the 9 brilliant stars. The other absolute beginning divine grade item disappeared from where it was. Watch out! Long Yu could only roar this in his mind. He could not really warn Consort Yu. But at this moment, he had already moved. The enormous body of the golden flame giant directly appeared in front of Consort Yu. He reached out and grabbed the black ball-shaped absolute beginning quality with his giant hand that was burning with golden flames. This piece of absolute beginning quality was condensed with an extremely strong explosive power. The demigod of the cloud shell race was basically trying to use the self-destruction of this piece of absolute beginning quality to cause some damage to Consort Yu. Even if it could not kill her completely, it could at least seriously injure her. Long Yu did not know if Consort Yu had sensed the danger or not. Anyway, he directly moved and did not give her any chance. In his hand, the golden flame divine power suddenly flowed. He exerted force and immediately crushed the black ball-shaped absolute beginning quality. This situation almost made the demigod of the cloud shell race collapse. It was not easy for it to obtain its 3 pieces of absolute beginning quality. It was not like some geniuses who were born with them. Instead, it was condensed through a special secret technique and countless hardships. It originally wanted to sacrifice one of its pieces to kill or seriously injure one of its opponents, so that it would have the right to withdraw. It did not expect that its piece of absolute beginning quality would be directly crushed by the golden flame giant. Chapter 1571. When the golden flame giant, that Long Yu turned and teleported over and crushed the godly absolute beginning item, Consort Yu was almost certain that her guess was correct. This golden flame giant was definitely on her side. Even if this golden flame giant wasn't Long Yu, it was still related to Long Yu. Anyway, it was something that the Eclipse Moon ancient region had arranged. It was either Long Yu or something that was controlled by Long Yu. Consort Yu was very happy now, since she was sure that the golden flame giant was on her side. Many things would be much easier to handle next. After Long Yu crushed a godly absolute beginning item, he immediately disrupted the 3 cloud shell demigods' plan to kill Consort Yu. Then he charged straight to one of the cloud shell demigods, raised his fist, and gathered boundless golden flame divine power before landing it on the demigod's body. The demigod of the cloud shell race seemed to be the weakest of the 3, but at this moment it unleashed an extremely terrifying power when it was on the brink of death. A layer of light blue water vapor spread out from its body, and patterns appeared one after another on the surface of the blue water vapor. This was an illusion pattern. If it was Long Yu's original body, he would basically not be affected by such an illusion pattern. However, he was currently in the form of a golden flame giant, and the secret martial arts technique of the body of pure world was basically ineffective. Almost in an instant, Long Yu's spirit was pulled into this light blue illusion pattern. He felt that he had come to a light blue world, and water vapor kept coming out from his surroundings. Then he was completely trapped in this illusory space. Long Yu knew that the situation was not good. He immediately erupted all the golden flame divine power in his body, closed his eyes, and then let the golden flame divine power slanted forward. Without any suspense, Long Yu's eruption instantly broke the illusion pattern. Then he blasted the cloud shell demigod that had cast the illusion pattern away. The golden flame divine power corroded its body and destroyed at least half of its physical body. The cloud shell demigod's illusion pattern was indeed powerful, but its physical strength and defense were not very good. After Long Yu got close to it, it was seriously injured. The other 2 members of the cloud shell race wanted to help, but Concubine Yu had recovered her wits and used her immortal demonic chi to activate the divine spirit martial technique. The 9 brilliant stars were completely trapped, so they had no chance to help. When Long Yu and Consort Yu worked together, their combat ability was actually very strong. The main reason was that Long Yu had turned into a golden flame giant and blocked in front of them, giving the 3 cloud shell demigods too much pressure. They did not have the time to pay attention to Consort Yu's attacks. In reality, Consort Yu's attack could not be ignored. After all, the 9 brilliant stars was a divine spirit martial technique, and it was cast with extremely dense divine spirit martial technique. It was not that easy to block. Long Yu took advantage of the situation and attacked. Since he had beaten the cloud shell demigod half to death, there was no reason for him to let it go. Seeing that the golden flame giant and Consort Yu were cooperating so well, the remaining cloud shell demigods and Silk Race could not help it anymore. They could confirm that this golden flame giant was together with the human race and the demon race. Otherwise, how could they have such tacit understanding? Could it be that they were all races from the Langius star zone? Or could it be that this golden flame giant was some kind of special existence? The Cloud Shell clan and the Silk clan had never seen such a situation before, so they had no way of determining the current situation. However, one thing was certain. The golden flame giant was extremely powerful. If they were to fight it head-on, none of them would be its match. Thus, in this kind of situation, the alliance between the Cloud Shell and Silk race immediately collapsed. The newly ascended demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race, who had the right to withdraw, chose to withdraw right away. The others began to band together and surround Long Zaition. Right now, Long Yu and Consort Yu were working together, so there was no way they could break through. Long Zaition was quite far away by himself, so they could try. If they could kill him, then they would have a chance to retreat from this deathmatch area. As for Frost and Imperial Wind, white light had just flashed above their heads. Without a doubt, they were about to be teleported out. On top of that, the two of them weren't weak either. Now that they were working together at such a crucial moment, killing either Frost or Imperial Wind wouldn't be an easy task. If they had to kill them in the next few breaths of time, then it would be impossible for them to do so. Thus, this caused Long Zaition to bear the most pressure alone. Long Yu and Consort Yu did not pay attention to him for now. Instead, they first killed the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell race. Then, they went to help Long Zaition. At this time, Long Zaition could not hold on any longer. Fortunately, Long Zaition's strength was slightly stronger than that of a normal new demigod. His golden dragon coiled around his body, making his defense very strong. Although his opponents were several new demigods of the foreign races working together, they could not deal any fatal damage to him. With the arrival of Long Yu and Consort Yu, the situation immediately became one-sided. The foreign races were not a match for the 3 of them working together. Concubine Yu and Long Zaiqian were very strong in the first place. Together with the golden fiery giant whose strength far exceeded that of a new demigod, they could basically kill any of the new demigods of the alien races instantly if they were to attack them together. Although Long Yu was not very willing to work together with Long Zaiqian, it had to be said that with him here, the battle had become much easier. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for him and Consort Yu to clean up the battlefield. It was very likely that some of the demigods of the foreign races would escape. Frost and Imperial Wind had just been teleported out. Before leaving, the two of them seemed to have a very good relationship with each other. They did not seem to be as hostile as they usually were in the Demigod Academy. After all, at this time, they were standing on the same side and fighting against the new demigods of the foreign races together. Moreover, if they made it out alive, they would become demigods of the human race and the demon race together. They would definitely work together more than they would fight against each other. The two of them were a bit surprised by the Golden Flame Giant's help. They were also very smart. From the way the Golden Flame Giant, Consort Yu, and Long Zaiqian worked together, it was impossible for the Golden Flame Giant to not have any relationship with Long Yu. Because if it was any other foreign race, they would not be so at ease leaving their backs to Consort Yu. This made Frost and Imperial Wind a bit regretful. If they hadn't left and cooperated with the Golden Flame Giant, they might have been able to obtain even more treasures from this spherical void. It has to be known that every treasure in this place was a true godly item. It was something that could not be obtained in the outside world. But since they had already chosen to leave, of course they could not stay. They could only pray that Consort Yu and Long Zaiqian would be able to obtain even better results. If that happened, the overall strength of the human race and the demon race would become even stronger. This was also very beneficial to them. Not long after, Long Yu, Consort Yu, and Long Zaiqian worked together and killed all the remaining Silk Race and Cloud Shell Race members. In the end, a total of 2 Silk Race demigods and 1 Cloud Shell Race demigod escaped. This was something that could not be helped. These new demigods of the foreign races all escaped separately and were transported out of the eroding moon ancient region. It would be very difficult for Long Yu and the other two to stop them all. After all, these foreign races were all demigod-level existences. Each of them had some pretty good life-saving methods. Wanting to kill each other in 10 breaths of time was not a 100% success rate. After cleaning up the battlefield, Long Yu left all of the treasures he had obtained to Consort Yu and Long Zaition. Apart from the three of them, there were no other creatures present, so he could do this without worry. Although the golden flame giant that he had turned into could not communicate with Consort Yu and Long Zaition, what he had done was enough to win the deepest trust of the two. Apart from Long Yu's incarnation or control, who else would hand over the precious treasures that they had obtained? Only his own people would do such a thing. Then, this golden flame giant was 100% certain that there was a certain connection between Long Yu and himself. Consort Yu and Long Zaition, on the other hand, wanted to continue following Long Yu to deal with the other new demigods of the foreign races and fight for more treasures. However, Long Yu did not give them a chance. He waved his hand and asked Consort Yu and Long Zaition to leave first. The following battle would definitely be even more dangerous. If it was just Long Yu alone, he could directly teleport away if he could not win. However, if he brought Consort Yu and Long Zaition with him, it would really be very troublesome when he fell into a predicament. After the golden flame giant left behind a few treasures, it directly teleported towards the center of the treasure spot. In one move, it had teleported a distance of 3,000 meters. Consort Yu and Long Zaition, on the other hand, were a little worried about Long Yu. However, seeing that Long Yu had left so decisively, they had no way of following him. In this space, their speed was only 1/10 of the golden flame giant's. Whether it was hurrying or fighting, they could not keep up with his footsteps. If they could keep up, Long Yu did not mind letting them follow along. After all, the more people, the stronger the battle strength. They could also leave this area at any time. There was danger, but it was not too great. Unfortunately, what Long Yu was going to do next was very fast. After fighting here, he would move to another place. The speed of teleportation definitely could not keep up with him, so he could only let them retreat first. As for Long Yu, although he had just won a battle, he was not too careless. Just now, it was just the treasure spot on the 3rd floor. As he went further and reached the treasure spot on the 4th floor, the opponents he would encounter would obviously be even stronger. Just now, he had encountered some relatively strong opponents, such as the powerful demigod of the Silk race, who had instantly killed Lang Qingshuang, and the demigod of the Cloud Shell race, who had 3 absolute beginning divine quality treasures. Next, there would definitely be even more experts that exceeded his expectations. In particular, Long Yu was very worried about running into that golden 6-winged creature. Chapter 1572. After Consort Yu and Long Zaition left, they quickly saw Frost and Imperial Wind. They were originally waiting in the preparation area. They didn't know how long it would take for Consort Yu, Long Zaition, and Long Yu to come out. They didn't think that Consort Yu and Long Zaition would come out so quickly. He didn't want us to follow him. He's too fast. After Consort Yu came out, she saw Frost and Imperial Wind's confused expressions. She sighed and explained, "That's not bad. He appeared in the form of the golden flame giant. Or perhaps he's controlling the golden flame giant. No matter which it is, after encountering other races, they won't think of us humans or Yao." Long Zaition said in a low voice, "Right now, let's just wait for him to come out. I believe that he won't die in there. Right now, his strength is stronger than ours. Let's first organize the resources we got this time. After we go back, we can all be considered leaders of the human and Yao races. There are some things that we need to prepare beforehand." Imperial Wind said in a clear voice. His voice was very encouraging. He was the type of person that was born to be a leader. This time, he stepped into the demigod realm. His strength increased by quite a bit. Most importantly, he obtained quite a few good things. If the 4 of them added up, they would have 4 top-grade creation items alone. Top quality creations were rumored to be existences that could create a demigod. Thus, the four of them were all thinking about who they should give this top quality creations to. Consort Yu thought of her own candidate. Apart from containing extremely rich creation energy, the most important function of a supreme grade creation item was that it could turn one of a cultivator's innate divine abilities into divinity. This was undoubtedly an extremely rare opportunity for cultivators who couldn't enter the eroding moon ancient domain. With a deified divine ability, one would have the chance to step into the demigod realm. Of course, the prerequisite was to have a certain understanding of the power of time. This was something that outsiders could not help with. Moreover, the supreme grade creations just happened to contain a certain kind of power of time. As long as one's comprehension was sufficient, a cultivator could completely leap from the level of a peak 7th-stage dominator to a demigod. If each of the four ultimate creations could make a demigod, then this trip to the Eclipse Moon Ancient Domain would be of great significance to the human race and the demon race. It was equivalent to having 8 more demigods at once. It was a pity that Lang Qingshuang died in the deathmatch, or there would have been 9 new demigods. Of course, not everyone could become a demigod with the ultimate creations. In order to become a demigod with the ultimate creations, the practitioner's own understanding and talent had to reach a certain level. Otherwise, no matter how many ultimate creations there were, it would be very difficult for him to step into the demigod level. Of course, these ultimate creations could also be used by one's own. If it was used by Consort Yu and the others, they could further upgrade their remaining divine abilities to deified divine abilities and increase their own strength. But to be honest, the increase in their combat strength was not particularly great. If they could have someone they trusted enough to help them step into the demigod level, it would be of much greater help to them. Apart from these 4 ultimate creations, they also obtained a divine rune source of revelation from Long Yu. This thing would be given to Long Zaiyin for now. Long Zaiyin was a member of the battlefield army. The divine rune source of revelation that he had obtained could be used to improve the combat strength of the entire army on the battlefield. Just the improvement of peak combat strength was not enough for the human race and the demon race to expand their territory. Most importantly, the overall strength of the army on the battlefield of the 2 races had to be improved. I don't know how many cultivation resources Long you can bring out from there this time, but at least it will be more than what we have now. Consort Yu thought to herself. Of course, the ultimate creations she had could be arranged by herself. As for the divine rune source of revelation, she did not want to covet it, because she knew very well that whatever Long Yu brought out from that space would be better than these things. By then, most of the things that Long Yu obtained would definitely be left in the forces of the Void Galaxy, which would indirectly strengthen the overall strength of Consort Yu's side. Consort Yu was now relieved. She had finally stepped into the demigod level. After returning to the Void Galaxy, she could join forces with the Dragon of the Nine Nether and destroy the demigod statue of the multi-winged race. In that case, it would be equivalent to another powerful demigod in the Void Galaxy not being sealed in the ancient ruins of the multi-winged race. She could be released. For the development of the entire Void Galaxy, it could be said to be of utmost importance. The 4 of them had begun to consolidate their strength outside and digest everything they had obtained in the eroding moon ancient domain. After they fully absorbed and used it, their strength would definitely become even stronger. As for Long Yu, he also encountered unprecedented trouble in the spherical void where the death fight took place. The range of his soul sense was within a radius of 30,000 meters. When he flew toward a certain treasure spot on the 4th floor, he suddenly noticed that some newly advanced demigods of alien races were surrounding him from 3 directions far away from him. Those 3 directions were the 3 races that Long Yu was most wary of. The mechanical race, the sword race, and the 6-winged race. The opponents had entered the range of 30,000 meters and were encircling him from different directions. Obviously, they had discovered his existence, or rather, they had perceived his location in some way. This was not good news for Long Yu. Moreover, Long Yu seemed to have a feeling that the encirclement against him was far from just these three races. These three clans were the strongest clans in the Lang Yu Star area. There were also some strong clans in the Wild Sand Star area and the Heavenly Dipper Star area. At this moment, they were also preparing. These clans seemed to know something about the Fire God Seal. It was possible that they knew about Long Yu's existence. Under such circumstances, Long Yu's situation became rather grim. However, in the face of such a situation, he did not panic. Because if he panicked now, it would undoubtedly mean that he had already lost the battle. The opponents were attacking from three directions, which wasn't a bad thing for Long Yu, because it meant that the opponents were still very far away from each other. With his ability to teleport 10,000 meters at a time, Long Yu could totally engage in guerrilla warfare with these guys. If he rushed in one direction first, he could kill the guy from that race first and then deal with the other two races. It would be much easier that way. Of course, he had to pick the softest persimmon first. Long Yu sensed from afar that there were 5 new demigods from the machine race, 4 from the sword race, and 7 from the six-winged race. One of them was a golden six-winged race, which was the guy that Long Yu had met twice in a row. Kill the sword race first and then run. Without any hesitation, Long Yu chose the direction of the sword race the moment he found the encirclement of the 3 races and started to teleport 10,000 meters at once. It shouldn't be too much pressure for Long Yu to deal with 2 new demigods at the same time. However, it was hard to say whether or not Long Yu could deal with 4 new demigods at the same time, and all of them were from the sword race. But he didn't have any other choice now. There was no doubt that these guys wanted to kill Long Yu so that he wouldn't leave this place alive. Of course, Long Yu didn't have the option to back out. If he backed out like this, would he be worthy of the mark of fire that he had obtained? Besides, if he backed out now, wouldn't the things in this space have nothing to do with him? He was still counting on these things to develop the Void Galaxy and make himself stronger. No matter what, a fierce battle was inevitable. Long Yu flew straight to where the 4 members of the sword race were. The 4 new demigods of the sword race had clearly seen where the fiery giant was moving in the void, and they quickly reacted. The 4 alien demigods that looked like long swords scattered in all directions. They didn't stay together. Instead, they split up and started to set up formations where they were. Long Yu didn't show any fear, because if they gathered together and fought him head-on, he might not be able to kill them. However, they split up, which gave Long Yu a chance to defeat them one by one. As long as Long Yu killed one of the members of the sword race before their formation destroyed him, he would be able to kill the other 3 new demigods without any suspense. If they acted alone, they wouldn't be able to set up any powerful formation in a short time, unless their formation was a joint formation. Therefore, under such circumstances, Long Yu only needed to kill one of the members of the sword race. The golden flame giant that he had turned into quickly flashed forward in the void. He could cover thousands of meters with each teleport. After only 10 breaths, he was not far away from the 4 members of the sword race. The new demigod teams of the machinery race and the six-winged race were on their way. They would arrive in about half an hour. Before that, Long Yu had to kill all the 4 new demigods of the sword race. If he was careless and got entangled by the other party, what awaited Long Yu was death. Long Yu chose one of the members of the sword race and was ready to strike first. However, before he took action, he suddenly felt that something was wrong in the space around him. From the pitch-black void, countless sword auras suddenly appeared. These sword auras formed a surging torrent that flashed out of the void like countless fish. They instantly enveloped the entire body of the golden flame giant of Long Yu. The formation prepared by the 4 members of the sword race was located in such a remote place. However, it was also because of this that Long Yu was caught unprepared. Countless sword auras enveloped the golden flame giant. Chapter 1573. The golden flame divine power suddenly burst out. Although the boundless sword aura formation covered the golden flame giant, the golden flame giant's punch created a gap. Then, Long Yu quickly rushed out of the gap and arrived in front of one of the new demigods of the sword race. All of them were new demigods. If they were outside, each of them could become a giant. However, in the Eclipse Moon Ancient region, they could only fight against the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Even then, they might not be able to defeat him. The golden flame divine power burst out like endless stars and condensed on the arms of the golden flame giant. Then, it smashed toward the body of the sword race. Countless auras of swords soared from the four newly promoted demigods of the swords again and congregated into barriers of sword auras, blocking the fiery giant's golden fist and forcing it to back off. Long Yu thought of something. The four-sword race didn't set up an offensive formation, but a defensive formation. Moreover, with the combined strength of the four-sword race, the sword aura defense formation was watertight. No matter which of the new demigods of the sword race he wanted to attack, he would be defended by the sword aura barrier and his attack would be blocked. Although the golden flame divine power that Long Yu had mastered was much more powerful than the other new demigods, the defense formed by the sword aura barrier was not something that Long Yu could break. Long Yu kept trying and changing his position, but he found that he really couldn't break the defense of the sword aura barrier. This made him a little frustrated. But soon he thought of something. He recalled the feeling when the flame mark was activated on his forehead. Following that feeling, he sensed that on the forehead of the golden flame giant that he had transformed into, a similar fire god seal had also appeared. At this moment, he felt that the golden flame divine power in his body had become a little stronger. Great! Without any hesitation, Long Yu knew that he could only fight them head-on. He had to kill the four new demigods of the sword race before the new demigods of the machinery race and the six-winged race arrived. Otherwise, he would be defeated without any suspense. Long Yu didn't know what would happen if he lost, but it was very likely that he would die. Regardless of whether the death of the fiery giant's physical body would affect the death of Long Yu's physical body, he was certain that these new demigods would not let go of his spirit and soul. Once his spirit and soul were destroyed, he would be dead for real. Even if he still had his physical body, there was nothing he could do. After all, the spirit was the foundation of a person, and now his spirit was in the body of this golden flame giant. He began to attack one of the newly promoted demigods of the sword race who seemed to be the weakest. His fists gathered even stronger golden flame divine power and punched at the newly promoted demigod of the sword race. More and more sword chi barriers were formed in front of a newly promoted demigod and blocked Long Yu's fists that were condensed with golden flame divine power. However, as Long Yu punched again and again, the speed at which the sword chi barriers were forming seemed to be unable to keep up. This made the four newly promoted demigods of the sword race a little nervous. The new demigods of the machinery race and the six-winged race were still 15 kilometers away. Every time they teleported 300 meters, they would need 50 teleportations. In other words, it would take them 50 breaths time to arrive here. Right now, they only needed to hold on for 50 breaths time. However, would Long Yu give them the chance? Following Long Yu's continuous punches, the golden flame divine power caused the sword chi barrier's defensive array to continuously tremble. The speed at which the sword chi barrier was formed could no longer keep up with Long Yu's speed of destruction. It became weaker and weaker with each blow. Finally, when the machinery race and the six-winged race were only 10 kilometers away from here, Long Yu completely broke the sword chi barrier with one punch. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the golden flame divine power burst out from his body and condensed into a golden flame divine dragon on his fist. Then, he attacked the newly promoted demigod of the sword race that was closest to him. This was a move that Long Yu had prepared for a long time. Although he could not use any techniques or martial arts techniques right now, he could secretly gather the divine power of the golden flames and kill one of the newly advanced demigods of the sword race with the divine power of the golden flames when he broke the barrier of the enemy's sword auras. Seeing this, the newly promoted demigod of the sword race was greatly shocked. Without any hesitation, the top of its head flashed with white light. It actually chose to retreat from this spherical void. After all, it was a powerful newly promoted demigod of the sword race. Of course, it had obtained treasures or killed other newly promoted demigods of alien races. Therefore, it was qualified to retreat from this spherical void at any time. However, how could Long Yu let it escape? The head of the newly promoted demigod of the sword race flashed with white light. Then its entire body that looked like a long sword flew away like a wisp of smoke. As soon as it left, the entire sword chi barrier completely collapsed. However, it had no other choice but to leave, because if it did not leave, the golden flame divine dragon would devour it completely. Then, the defensive formation of the sword chi barrier would still be broken. There is no difference. Instead of making a meaningless sacrifice, it might as well try to protect its own life. However, what it did not expect was that the strength of the golden flame giant that Long Yu had turned into was far beyond its imagination. The golden flame divine dragon landed where the new demigod of the sword race originally stood, directly destroying the defensive formation core there. Then, Long Yu directly teleported a kilometer away, arriving next to the fleeing new demigod of the sword race. The divine power of the golden flame divine dragon instantly condensed into a beam. This was a martial art technique that gathered spiritual light. Long Yu had just tried it. Although he could not use other martial arts techniques or his own techniques, and he could not even use the secret martial arts because he was not in his own body, this move that gathered spiritual light was a martial art technique that could be performed. A divine martial art technique. Naturally, it was a technique that could be activated by the power of gods. Being able to use the gathered spiritual light was a great improvement for Long Yu. It allowed him to instantly burst out the power of a punch that was 4 to 5 times stronger than before. The gathered spiritual light shot out and landed on the body of the newly promoted demigod of the sword race, completely shattering the body of the sword race. The entire body of the sword race that was shaped like a long sword was instantly torn into pieces and turned into dust in the void. The first member of the sword race was finally killed. Right now, the newly advanced demigods of the machinery race and the six-winged race were still 2,500 zhong away from Long Yu. For the experts at the demigod level, even if they were restricted by the eroding moon ancient domain, they could basically launch an attack within a range of 3,000 zhong. In other words, Long Yu only had the last 15 breaths to kill the remaining 3 newly promoted demigods of the sword race. Without any hesitation, after killing the first member of the sword race, he teleported to the other newly promoted demigod of the sword race. Then, he condensed the divine power of the golden flame, divine dragon in both his fists and attacked the newly promoted demigod of the sword race from 2 directions. The demigod of the sword race wanted to run, but it was impossible for it to do so. White light also shone on its head, but it was impossible for it to escape. Under such circumstances, this member of the sword race had a sacrificial spirit. It actually dashed directly toward the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Endless sword light shone from the void. Any member of the sword race had extremely powerful attack power, not to mention these newly promoted demigods of the sword race. The first one just now was purely trying to escape. Therefore, Long Yu seized the opportunity and instantly killed it with the divine martial art technique of gathering spiritual light. However, the second newly promoted demigod of the sword race was not so easy to fool. When it saw the death of the first member of the sword race, it understood that it would not be able to escape since it was targeted by Long Yu. Under such circumstances, of course, it wanted to stall the golden flame giant as much as possible so that the golden flame giant would not kill its companions. The sword light shone, and the void restriction dispersed. The entire body of the golden flame giant was enveloped by the sword light. Then, the sword light pierced into the golden flame divine power on the surface of its body, extinguishing part of the golden flame divine power on the surface of its body. Then, the golden flame giant took out a modified demigod source item from its small world. It was an extremely smooth stone. The surface of the stone was completely transparent, and it could even reflect the image of Long Yu's golden flame giant. This demigod source item was also the essence of a dead demigod, but had been modified at the elementary level. Now, Long Yu had a rough idea of the levels of demigod source items. They were mainly broken, intact, and above them were elementary modification, intermediate modification, advanced modification, and so on. This was because there were 3 mid-level modified demigod source items in the space of the deathmatch segment of the Eroding Moon Ancient region. However, they were all treasures on the 4th floor, so it was unlikely that anyone would be able to obtain them yet. The new demigod of the sword race directly took out the stone. It was an elementary modified demigod source item. The new demigod wolf of the demon race, Qing Shuang, had died to an elementary modified demigod source item. Then, the Silk Race powerhouse had taken the redline demigod source item away. Now, another elementary modified demigod source item appeared in front of Long Yu. However, Long Yu did not give it the chance to use this demigod source item. Gather the spiritual light. The fire god mark on Long Yu's forehead lit up again. The golden flame divine power all over his body condensed into a ray of light, which shattered the void and landed on the body of the new demigod of the sword race. The next moment, the physical body of the sword race shattered into pieces. However, it was only a clone. Long Yu did not expect this. The other party had bought him an extra breath of time, and because of this, the elementary modified demigod source item finally showed its effects. Countless mirrors jumped out of the smooth stone and formed a city of mirrors, trapping the golden flame giant within. Chapter 1574. The fiery giant that Long Yu had turned into was surrounded by countless translucent mirrors. He tried to wrap his golden flame divine power around his fist and then smashed it towards these mirrors, only to find that these mirrors could actually reflect the power of his golden flame divine power. This reflected power even caused the golden flames on his golden flame giant's body to dim a little. Gather spiritual light. Long Yu had no other choice. He had to get out of here as soon as possible and kill the new demigod of the swordsman. Otherwise, the situation would be very bad. Gathering the spirit light and using the 5-fold increase in strength, the mirrors were finally unable to resist and were shattered by a beam of condensed spirit light. Then, Long Yu aimed at where the new demigod of the swordsman was and teleported there. The new demigod of the swordsman had intended to trap the fiery giant for a while with the preliminary modified divine-level source item, and then take the opportunity to leave this space. However, Long Yu's breakthrough was too fast. In no more than 3 breaths, the fiery giant had arrived in front of the new demigod of the swordsman again. It immediately used all the power in its body. Infinite sword auras burst out and fell on the body of the fiery giant. However, it didn't cause any damage to the fiery giant. The golden flame divine power spread out and blocked the sword auras outside of its body. Then, the sword auras dispersed under the bombardment of the golden flame divine power. The gathering spiritual light was gathered again and launched. With a momentum that could break the sky, it fell directly in front of the new demigod of the swordsman. This time, Long Yu was still cautious. Without waiting for the result to appear, he immediately condensed another convergence spirit light. As expected, after the first gathering spiritual light hit, the new demigod of the swordsman was shattered. It turned out to be another illusion. The second gathering spiritual light that Long Yu prepared worked. His spiritual senses were extremely strong in this space. After he killed the illusion of the new demigod of the swordsman, there was no longer anything that interfered with his spiritual senses. He immediately found the real body of the new demigod. Although it was hidden in the void, it was still bombarded by Long Yu's gathering spiritual light. In the next moment, the golden flame divine power erupted. The new demigod of the sword race was killed by Long Yu just like that, and the basic modified divine-like source item, which was the smooth stone, fell into Long Yu's hands. The divine mirror stone. Long Yu's heart skipped a beat. He could also use this beginner-level modified divine source item. It seemed to solve his urgent problem. That was because he had been stalled by the new demigod of the sword race for too long. It was basically impossible for him to kill the other two sword race members. However, with this beginner-level modified Divine Source item, he could still give it a try. Divine Mirror Stone. Divine Mirror Image appear. The golden flame giant that Long Yu had turned into held the Divine Mirror Stone tightly in his left hand and activated the effect of this Divine Source item. Immediately, countless mirror-like surfaces appeared in the void. Just like the city of mirrors that trapped Long Yu just now, the mirror-like surfaces stood in the way of the new demigods of the machinery race and the six-winged race. They also blocked the route of the two new demigods of the sword race to escape to the other two races. The two members of the sword race were shocked. White light lit up above their heads. They felt that they couldn't escape anymore, so they chose to retreat. At this moment, they didn't flee in panic. That was because they knew very well that fleeing was useless. If they didn't join forces now, then they would definitely be killed by Long Yu when the time came. 10 breaths of time was very likely to be enough. After all, the two members of the sword race had just died in front of them. They didn't dare to take any chances at all. Let's die together. Thinking to himself, Long Yu looked at the two new demigods of the sword race who had their way blocked. The next moment, the divine power of golden flames suddenly arrived. With the help of the power of the divine source item, the divine power of golden flames actually condensed into a city of mirrors. A city of mirrors burning with golden flames was built just like that. The two members of the sword race who wanted to fight against Long Yu together were trapped in it. Then, the city of mirrors suddenly exploded. Without any suspense, the two new demigods of the sword race who were trapped in it were directly turned into ashes. They couldn't resist the combined attack of the divine power of golden flames and the divine mirror stone at all. The remaining two members of the sword race were easily killed just like that. Even Long Yu felt that it was a little unbelievable. This preliminary modified divine source item was indeed not bad. It could actually make use of the divine power of golden flames and then explode with domineering power. Its destructive power was several times stronger than gathering spiritual light. This was naturally a good thing for Long Yu. It also made him even more expectant. If he could get other better divine source items, such as the advanced modified divine source item on the 5th floor, how much stronger would his strength be? There is only one high-grade modified divine source item in the entire deathmatch segment, and it was the one in the center. Long Yu saw it from the beginning. However, he was the inheritor of the divine throne mark, so he couldn't get that reward directly. He could only wait for the others to take it and then kill them before he could take it back. In other words, he had to drive out or kill all the new demigods of the alien races before the others got that reward. In that way, all the remaining treasures would belong to Long Yu alone. Regardless of which one it was, it would be rather difficult for Long Yu. It was very likely that Long Yu couldn't kill an opponent who had obtained an advanced modified divine source item in his current state. It was not that he couldn't deal with a new demigod of the alien races, but that he couldn't deal with the advanced modified divine source item. It was even more unrealistic to drive all the new demigods of the alien races out of this space before someone got that thing. Right now, he had just killed 4 new demigods of the sword race. There were still 5 new demigods of the machine race and 7 new demigods of the six-winged race left. It was still a great challenge for Long Yu. Although Long Yu had a preliminary modified divine source item, it was very likely that the remaining 12 demigods of the sword race also had something similar or even more. After killing 4 new demigods of the sword race, Long Yu felt a little less pressured. Then, he turned around and ran. He didn't choose to fight against the 12 demigods because he saw that even the mirror city that he created with the divine mirror stone was blown up by the 12 demigods in less than 1 breath. Therefore, it was impossible for him to fight the demigods head-on right now. Before the demigods surrounded him, Long Yu immediately turned around and fled in another direction. He left the shadow of a giant of golden flames in the void, which made the remaining new demigods of the machine race and the six-winged race feel strange. How could this guy think of running when he was so strong? It seemed that the giant of golden flames was very clear about its own strength. Although it could kill 4 or 5 new demigods, it was absolutely impossible for it to resist more than 10 new demigods at the same time. Therefore, they were even more confident in their alliance and kept chasing in that direction. The giant of golden flames that Long Yu turned into, however, went further and further away. It was because he could travel a distance of 10,000 zhong with one teleport, while the other new demigods could only move forward 100 zhong in this space. Unless they could trap Long Yu in some kind of powerful formation, it was impossible to stop or even kill him. However, the machine race and the six-winged race were not in a hurry. This time, even if they directly retreated from this void, it wouldn't be a loss at all because the 4 new demigods of the sword race were already dead. In the entire Langius Star Zone, the sword race, the machine race, and the six-winged race ruled over each other. It could be said that they controlled more than 50% of the resources in the Langius Star Zone. Now that the 4 new demigods of the sword race were dead, the other 2 races still had so many new demigods left. After the trip to the eroding moon ancient region was over, the machine race and the six-winged race would be able to suppress the sword race further and obtain more cultivation resources. The only thing that they needed to pay attention to was the giant of golden flames. Because of the six-winged race, they knew the identity of the giant of golden flames. However, only the six-winged race knew the identity of the giant of golden flames. It didn't tell anyone else. It had its own plan. Very soon, Long Yu flew more than 10,000 zhong away from them. They couldn't find the figure of the giant of golden flames anymore. However, they still continued to chase in the direction where Long Yu disappeared. This was because they would encounter the giant of golden flames again very soon. In that direction, the 2 strongest races of the Wild Sandstar Zone were fighting against each other. If the giant of golden flames wanted to break through, no matter how strong it wouldn't be that easy. The machine race and the six-winged race could completely stay calm and unruffled in the midst of the chaos. They could catch up slowly and appear only when the battle was almost over. This was a very good plan. However, it was a pity that Long Yu's actions were too fast. He was so fast that they couldn't even guess what he was doing. Of course, Long Yu could feel it. About 10,000 zhong in front of him, there were 2 strong alien races fighting against each other. However, he could feel that the battle between the 2 strong alien races was coming to an end. If Long Yu appeared now, it would be the right time to clean up the mess. To him, this was undoubtedly an extremely good situation. In any case, any newly advanced alien race demigod that appeared in this space was Long Yu's enemy. As long as he could kill them all, it would be fine. If Long Yu wanted to obtain the greatest result, he couldn't let go of any alien race that he could kill. Right now, many treasures had already been taken away by the newly advanced alien race demigods. This also meant that he had lost a lot of treasures. Chapter 1575. This was the fiercest attack of Long Yu's. The 2 races that were fighting in front of him were both super races in the Wild Sandstar Zone. Their status in the Wild Sandstar Zone was similar to that of the Sword Race, the Machinery Race, and the Sword Race in the Langius Star Zone. Because the race preparation areas of the 3 star zones were located in the 3 galaxies around the eroding moon ancient region, the races in each star zone were basically separated. The races that Long Yu had been passing through just now were basically all from the Langius Star Zone. Of course, there were exceptions, but not many. For example, the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race were exceptions. Generally speaking, when one entered the void of the deathmatch, the location would be random. But, generally speaking, it would still be divided according to the location of the 3 star zones. It was precisely because of this that the Sword Race, the Machine Race, and the Six-Winged Race were able to fly towards Long Yu's location at almost the same time. They couldn't sense Long Yu's existence from far away, but they were able to make an agreement to head towards the center of the area together before the start of the deathmatch. In this way, there was a very high probability that they would encounter the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Of course, for the newly advanced demigods of the machinery race and the sword race. They didn't know the true identity of the golden flame giant. They only received a notice from the six-winged race that a very special existence would appear in this death match. If they could kill that special existence, they would gain a lot of benefits. In order to make sure that this wasn't a conspiracy set up by the six-winged race, the sword race and the machinery race secretly joined hands. But they didn't expect that it was true. Moreover, when the newly advanced demigods of the three races were advancing toward the center, they really encountered the so-called special existence. Moreover, the golden flame giant was so strong that it could completely kill the four newly advanced demigods of the sword race in a short period of time. The remaining machinery race were very hesitant, but this made them even more convinced that they could obtain great benefits by killing the golden flame giant. As a matter of fact, if the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into was killed in this death match, then the remaining 10 newly advanced demigods in this death match would roughly distribute all the remaining treasures equally. This was a very good temptation. However, only the six-winged clan knew about this, because before this, only a genius like Long Yu had appeared in the six-winged clan. He had also become a golden flame giant in the deathmatch round. This information was only known to the higher-ups of the six-winged clan. It was impossible for them to leak it out. As for the expert of their six-winged clan who had once transformed into the golden flame giant, he had already gone into seclusion. It was said that he was comprehending the barrier to break through to the divine soul realm. Up until now, he had not appeared for several hundred years. However, everyone knew that he still existed and was still alive in this world. Moreover, he was the last powerful guardian of the six-winged clan. If the six-winged clan were to encounter a crisis of extermination, the appearance of that expert would definitely be able to clear away all obstacles. This was the greatest foundation of the six-winged clan. Even the machine race and the sword race did not know of this news. The young geniuses of the machine race and the sword race that Long Yu saw in that space were chosen to be imprinted with the flame god seat. Of course, all of these things were unknown to Long Yu now. When he saw the two alien races of the Wild Sand Star Zone fighting against each other, he immediately rushed over. He did not hide his strength at all. Every time he teleported, he would cover a distance of 10,000 zhong. With just a few leaps, he had already approached the place where the two alien races were fighting. The reason why Long Yu approached so boldly was that there were only 6 newly advanced demigods left in the battle between the two alien races. Moreover, these 6 newly advanced demigods were all injured. None of them could exert 100% of their strength. These two alien races had a deep hatred for each other. The battle between them was really too tragic. Different from the situation in the Langastar Zone, if the 3 alien races were in power, they would restrict and balance each other. As a result, there would not be so many bloody battles. However, the situation in the Wild Sandstar Zone was different. The other alien races were all relatively weak. However, only these 2 alien races were too powerful. In the Eclipse Moon Ancient Domain alone, these 2 alien races had 11 and 13 newly advanced demigods respectively. This number far exceeded that of the sword race, the machine race, and the six-winged race. One of these 2 alien races was the nature race. Like the demon race, the individuals of the nature race were divided into many kinds. However, every individual was a plant, or in other words, a plant in the eyes of humans and demons. Of course, the power that the nature race mastered was as comprehensive as that of humans and demons. It was a complicated race that could master all kinds of divine characters and the primordial power. In this race, there were also many kinds and branches. Long Yu did not know the specific details. Anyway, the relevant information was not even recorded in the demigod colleges, let alone what Long Yu knew. He only knew that these guys were all newly advanced demigods, and the strength of the newly advanced demigods was not as good as that of the golden flame giant that he had transformed into. That was enough. However, he had to be careful of the strength of these guys when they went all out. After all, although their strength was not particularly strong, if they had some quasi-divinity source items or some weird martial arts methods, Long Yu would still encounter some trouble. Once there were too many troubles, even he would not be able to solve them. The other race was called the Oracle race. Basically, every individual of the Oracle race was a ball of light. If the individuals of the Oracle race gathered together, there would be balls of light of various colors squeezed together. If the individuals of the Oracle race were of the same color, they could even fuse together and become a new individual. This was the strongest aspect of the Oracle race. They could rapidly improve their martial arts realm through fusion. It was also because of this that the Oracle race called themselves God's messengers. Only the Oracle race, as the God's messengers, could have the ability to improve their martial arts realm so quickly. Of course, in the territory of the Oracle clan, the most common thing was not the willing fusion of two sides. Instead, it was the one-sided devouring of the weaker side by the stronger side. This caused the entire territory of the Oracle clan to be filled with an atmosphere of slaughter. This also led to the fact that every individual of the Oracle race was very strong. This was because the weak would be devoured, and they would not even have the right to retain their own consciousness. There were a total of 13 members of the Oracle race who had stepped into the demigod realm in the Eclipse Moon Ancient Domain this time, while 11 members of the Nature race had stepped into the demigod realm. Among the nearly 200 races that had participated in the Eclipse Moon Ancient Domain, these two races were the most powerful. Long Yu did not see many members of these two races in the advancement area and the fifth area because they were advancing very quickly. Long Yu was slightly at the back of each area, and he waited for a while before taking action. Therefore, it was a good thing for him to avoid the competition between these peak experts. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would not be able to obtain the Flame God Seal. Of course, Long Yu did not know if the Flame God Seal would be harmful to him, but at the very least, it could increase his strength. This was for sure. Long Yu felt that even if he returned to his original body, he would be able to gradually master the divine power of the Golden Flames, because he had already learned the method to activate the Flame God Seal on his forehead. At this moment, there were only 3 individuals of the Nature race and 3 individuals of the Oracle race left in the field. The good news was that the remaining 3 individuals of the Oracle race were all in different colors, namely blue, purple, and white. This meant that they could not increase their strength through fusion, but it also meant that 1 or 2 of the 3 Oracle race were very likely to have been fused by 2 new demigods. In that case, their individual strength will be much higher than that of other new demigods. Long Yu did not care too much about this. After all, his strength was much higher than that of the new demigods. Even if the Oracle race had fused, it would be impossible for them to resist his attack. After all, there were only 6 opponents left, and there was a blood feud between the 2 races. Basically, it was impossible for them to work together to deal with Long Yu. The first demigod that Long Yu approached was a new demigod of the Nature race. This new demigod of the Nature race was made of some brown branches. It had countless twisted brown trunks, and a lot of brown liquid was flowing on its body. It seemed to be heavily wounded, and blood was flowing out of the wounds. Long Yu went straight to the root of the problem and did not give the new demigod of the Nature race any chance. Although the overall strength of the Nature race and the Oracle race was very strong, it did not mean that each of them was strong individually. After all, they were all new demigods. Why would they be stronger than other new demigods? The 2 new demigods of the Nature race had already realized the arrival of the golden fiery giant and made preparations separately. However, they did not expect that the golden fiery giant would charge at them so decisively and smash down with its fist. It was true that they were very surprised that the golden fiery giant could teleport thousands of meters in one go, but they had always been proud and thought that only the Oracle race was a match for them. Therefore, they did not escape or retreat from this space immediately. As a matter of fact, none of the remaining 6 new demigods were qualified to leave this space. Although the Nature race and the Oracle's race fought fiercely, most of those who were qualified to leave had already left. There were too many of them, and it was impossible for them to be like the other races, who had to fight for everyone's right to leave before they could leave together. If they could leave, they would leave without any hesitation. If they couldn't leave, they would find a way to kill other alien races or seize other treasures. This was the cruelty of the two races. Chapter 1576. Long Yu rushed directly to the old brown tree of the nature race. The golden flame divine power had already condensed on his fist, and then he blasted it out with the method of gathering spiritual light, directly shooting it at the tree. Without any suspense, the golden flame divine power condensed in this fist directly penetrated the body of the old brown tree, leaving a large hole in the center of its body. But the strongest aspect of the nature race was recovery. This old brown tree's movements were a little slow, but its recovery ability was extremely terrifying. Even the damage caused by the golden flame divine power was completely recovered within a breath's time. Only the brown juice that kept flowing out of its body indicated that it was still seriously injured. However, this heavy injury was not caused by Long Yu. Instead, it was caused by the divine Envoy clan. After all, it was a race that had been fighting against the nature race for countless years. The Oracle's race knew that the nature race's recovery ability was extremely strong, so of course they had some special methods to deal with them. Now, although Long Yu had mastered the powerful golden flame divine power, he was actually unable to cause effective damage to the tree, which surprised him very much. However, Long Yu did not stop attacking the nature race. The divine mirror stone appeared in his hand, and he continuously condensed the golden flame divine power in the divine mirror stone. Then, through the divine mirror stone, he attacked the fellow of the nature race in a special way. The mirror city, formed by the golden flame divine power, directly surrounded the old brown tree, and then the entire golden mirror city suddenly exploded. Now, the most exhilarating thing that Long Yu felt after turning into the golden flame giant was that the power in his body was almost infinite, because any power that he consumed could be quickly replenished from the nearby void. Although it was called the void, in fact, every inch of space contained 5 kinds of primordial powers, and space was composed of the 5 kinds of primordial powers in different structures. The body of the golden flame giant could naturally transform the 5 kinds of primordial powers into the power that it was familiar with. This was the strength of the demigod realm. Of course, Long Yu sensed that the strength of the fiery giant was no longer at the demigod level. It had even surpassed the demigod level. As for exactly what level it was, he had no idea, because he had never heard of such a level. Above demigods should be gods, but in fact, Long Yu didn't think that the fiery giant had the strength of a god. The golden mirror city exploded apart, and it formed a golden vortex. Even though the brown tree's recovery ability was extremely terrifying, it was completely drowned by the vortex at this moment, and not a single bit of it remained. The terror of this technique undoubtedly caused the remaining 2 nature tribe beings to be horrified. In fact, the nature race was easy to deal with. That was because this race's movement speed was relatively slow. It was mainly because they didn't have a good grasp of the space divine characters and with absolute beginning power. They didn't have a high level of intelligence like other races, so they weren't as agile. Don't think that just because most of the nature tribe were plants, they could easily grasp the wood absolute beginning power. The reality was exactly the opposite. No one knew why this was the case. In any case, this was a fact. If one really wanted to find out, they would have to research the ancient history of the nature race, or even search for the level of the gods. This was impossible for anyone in the current era. The greatest advantage of the slow-moving nature tribe was their extremely powerful regenerative abilities. Even if the Oracle's tribe found a special way to deal with the nature tribe, it was still very difficult to completely kill a powerful nature tribe being. In a situation where the cultivation of both parties was similar, if one wanted to kill an individual nature tribe being, they would have to exhaust all of the other party's strength. But there was also a very simple solution. that was to crush it with power that was several times or even dozens of times stronger. In that case, the nature tribe's recovery ability would be completely useless. Therefore, the nature tribe was basically stationed at the border with powerful individuals, unlike the human tribe and the demon tribe who relied on the number of armies. At the border of the nature tribe's territory, there were some powerful individuals guarding it. They were existences that were at least 7th phase great rulers, and even demigods would personally guard the border. As for the territory, there were also many experts, but most of them were the relatively weak juniors of the nature tribe. The experts of the nature tribe were using their lives to create a better cultivation environment for their juniors. Under the protection of the experts of the nature tribe, there were very few external enemies that could invade the territory of the nature tribe. Demigods were already the strongest existences in the nearby star field. Once the nature tribe reached the demigod level, they could basically be said to be immortal. In fact, a demigod of the nature tribe could even fight against 3 demigods of the oracle's tribe on their own without dying and last for at least a day. And a day was enough for the demigods of the nearby nature tribe to rush over to help. Simply put, the nature tribe was completely the type that bullied the weak and feared the strong. When encountering the weak, they could not kill them no matter what, but when encountering the strong, they could easily crush and kill them with absolute power. That was the situation that Long Yu was in right now. He was able to kill the brown old tree with absolute power, which meant that his strength had far surpassed the brown old tree in the demigod realm. As expected of an existence that could teleport thousands of feet in a single instant, the remaining 2 nature tribe members were filled with grief and indignation. They immediately joined forces and launched an attack against the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Eternal level divine text, heart fear divine text, god level martial art, split kill. The 2 nature tribe creatures each unleashed their most powerful attacks. One of the grayish-white tree roots directly activated the eternal level divine text, which turned out to be a mental attack divine text, heart fear divine text. This eternal level divine text, combined with its mental attack method, actually invaded Long Yu's mind in an instant. As for the other nature tribe member, its whole body suddenly split apart and actually quickly disintegrated into tiny particles that could not be seen with the naked eye, surrounding Long Yu from the void. Then, each of these disintegrated small particles actually erupted with extremely terrifying destructive power, not much inferior to the explosion of Long Yu's Golden Mirror City just now. For a moment, the golden flame giant was dumbfounded where it stood. Long Yu's mind and soul were controlled by the other party's heart fear divine text, and he could not break free for a moment. He felt as if he had fallen into an endless black hole, and then he kept falling into the black hole. Falling, there was no end. This feeling of infinity made Long Yu's mind and soul sink deeper and deeper, but he still maintained the last bit of sobriety in the end. He kept reminding himself that he could not sink like this, or he would be doomed. As for the divine soul martial skill, split explosion, it produced a boundless explosive force that engulfed the huge body of the golden flame giant from all directions. Fortunately, the golden flame giant was protected by a layer of golden flames on the surface of his body, so he did not suffer any serious injuries. However, the golden flames on the surface of his body had dimmed a lot, causing the power that he could unleash to weaken a little. Of course, Long Yu could feel that his weakened power was rapidly recovering. The most critical problem was that his mind and soul had been sucked into the black hole by the eternal level divine text of heart fear, and he could not wake up for a moment. Even with his infinite willpower, it would take at least 3 breaths to break free from the endless black hole. Many things could happen in these 3 breaths of time. But fortunately, apart from the 2 new demigods of the nature tribe, there were also 3 new demigods of the oracle tribe. When they saw that one of the new demigods of the nature tribe was killed by the golden flame giant, and then the remaining 2 directly attacked the golden flame giant, the 3 new demigods of the oracle tribe were extremely excited. Purple light, blue light, and white light, the three new demigods of the Oracle tribe moved at the same time, each using their own divinized techniques and methods, using divine texts that were at least at the revelation level, and all kinds of fierce attacks crashed toward the two new demigods of the nature tribe. They were very clear about the threat that the golden flame giant posed to them. It seemed that the golden flame giant did not care about its targets and was going to kill all the living beings in the field. But it was exactly because of this that they attacked the nature tribe without hesitation. If they did not kill the two of the nature tribe, they would not be able to escape this space. The strongest experts of the Oracle tribe and the nature tribe, as well as those who were relatively lucky, had all left. The 6 new demigods of the two sides had to kill an opponent or obtain a treasure in order to escape this space. Because of the hatred between the two sides, they did not look for other alien races as opponents, but fought to the death here. The arrival of the golden flame giant changed the whole situation. The 2 members of the nature tribe wanted to kill Long Yu and avenge their companion. The 3-headed Oracle tribe, on the other hand, wanted to kill the 2 members of the nature tribe quickly and then leave this space, winning the right to live. These guys were all new demigods, and none of them wanted to die in a battle to the death before they could go out and show off their might. Therefore, getting out alive was the top priority of the 3-headed Oracle tribe. For the 2 heads of the nature tribe, the 3-headed Oracle tribe even had the intention to compete with each other. After all, 3 of them were competing for 2 heads, and in the end, only 2 of them would be able to get out alive. The remaining one would either find an opportunity to kill other alien races, or most likely die here. Long Yu fell into the black hole of his soul caused by the divine text of fear. Fortunately, the 3-headed Oracle tribe helped him just like that, giving him time to catch his breath. Although he might not die if he held on for 3 breaths, he would still lose a lot of strength, and it would be quite troublesome to recover. Chapter 1577. Long had time to catch his breath. As for the 2 new demigods of the nature race, the situation had become extremely bad. They had just launched an attack on the golden flame giant when the 3 new demigods of the Oracle's race behind them wanted to take their heads. The attacks of the Oracle's race were extremely fierce. In an instant, the 2 nature race were enveloped by the infinite power of the divine characters. The sound of explosions echoed incessantly, and the divine characters of various colors flickered in the void. The 3 new demigods of the Oracle's race, which were blue, purple, and white, all used different powers. The blue Oracle's race used the power of the divine characters of the lightning attribute. The purple Oracle's race comprehended the power of the divine characters of the life attribute, and the white Oracle's race mastered the power of space. The 3 launched attacks at the same time, and the 2 new demigods of the nature race had no way to stop them. Their bodies were constantly suffering serious injuries. Although they were recovering quickly, they could not keep up with the speed of being injured. After all, the Oracle's race had their own way of dealing with the nature race. At this time, Long Yu was still trapped in the infinite black hole that the divine characters of fear had created for his spirit and soul. However, the black hole in front of him was getting brighter and brighter. Golden flames gradually appeared in front of him, rescuing him from the infinite black hole. At this time, 3 breaths had already passed. He was a little worried that his body of the golden flame giant had been seriously injured. When he woke up, he found that the nature race and the Oracle's race were already in the middle of fierce attacks. This was quite surprising, but he had a better understanding of the hatred between the 2 races. Even if these 5 fellows joined forces, they could simultaneously suppress the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. It was impossible for these 5 fellows to join forces with each other. For the new demigods of the nature race, even if they wanted to avenge their dead companions, they would not join hands with the Oracle's race. It was the same the other way around. No matter what, even if they were really facing a foreign enemy, they would not join hands with each other. This was naturally good news for Long Yu. However, if he had known that this would be the case, he wouldn't have bothered to come here. There were no treasures in this place. The treasures had already been taken away by the other alien races and left this space. Even if Long Yu didn't come, these oracles and naturals wouldn't have taken any more treasures, right? Most likely, they would fight to the death here. If they could kill one, they would leave. In the end, none of them would be left alive. Otherwise, they would choose to retreat after killing their opponents. When Long Yu woke up, the two sides were in full swing. After pondering for a while, he immediately retreated into the distance. He did not participate in the battle. Instead, he chose to observe the battle from thousands of feet away. He wanted to ensure that all of these fellows were dead. In any case, there was still some time before the machinery race and the six-winged race caught up to them. Hence, they were not in a hurry to escape. The two naturals were being suppressed by the three oracles and had almost no power to fight back. However, the naturals' terrifying regenerative abilities allowed them to persist in their original spots. It seemed that they were really difficult to kill. Of course, the three oracles were no longer under any pressure. Basically, it was impossible for the naturals to make a comeback. Originally, it was very likely that the three newly advanced demigods of the oracles and the naturals would be in a stalemate for a long time before a winner could be decided. However, when Long Yu transformed into a golden flame giant and jumped in to kill one of the naturals, the overall situation became one-sided. The naturals were in a very bad situation. However, they did not run away. Instead, they used all their skills to fight the three oracles to the death. This kind of spirit was rather admirable to Long Yu. It also made him sigh with emotion. Just how great was the hatred between the two races. Of course, it was unlikely that they could escape now. It must be known that the speed of the naturals was not fast in the first place. If they could not defeat them, they could only wait for death. However, before they died, they would also pay a heavy price for killing them. The three oracles, on the other hand, cooperated with each other very well. All kinds of divine text techniques were used at the same time. Then, they built layer after layer of defensive barriers to resist the counterattack launched by the naturals before their death. However, although they did their best to defend, the two naturals performed the martial arts secret technique that was passed down through their race, and their bodies began to burn. While burning their lives, their combat ability would constantly increase. In the end, they would even be able to cross a level to deal with the enemy. The price to perform this martial arts secret technique was their own life force. If it was not at a critical moment, the naturals would definitely not use this technique. But now they had used it, because they could tell that they were going to die here today. Instead of being killed by the oracles, they might as well burn their lives. On one hand, they might cause some damage to the other party. On the other hand, they might also burn their lives to death, preventing the other party from obtaining the heads, and thus being unable to leave this deathmatch space. Long Yu, on the other hand, looked at the battlefield with interest. If the two naturals were to burn themselves to death, wouldn't it mean that none of the three oracles would be able to leave? In the end, Long Yu would still have to do it himself. Long Yu shook his head. From the looks of it, it was better to just get rid of the other party, so that he wouldn't waste time here. After all, if he wasted time here, it was very likely that during this period of time, other new demigod aliens would take away even more treasures. Without hesitation, Long Yu once again rushed into the battlefield with a flash. After teleporting 1,000 meters in one go, Long Yu raised the fist of the golden flame giant and displayed the condensed spiritual light. A golden wave of light instantly swept out. His target was one of the Divine Emissary clan, which was the white Divine Emissary clan that had mastered the power of Space Divine Rune. This guy was very agile. If Long Yu did not get rid of it, it was very likely that the other party would cause him some trouble. The condensed spiritual light suddenly burst out, condensing the destructive power of the golden flame divine power by 5 times, falling on that guy's body of white light. This divine emissary race was completely a life form of light, and light was their body. Because Long Yu appeared in extremely terrifying speed and arrived beside it in an instant, and the condensed spiritual light was directly prepared in advance. The white oracles had no time to react at all, and its body was directly penetrated by the golden flame divine power. Then, Long Yu stretched out his hand, and the golden flame divine power that penetrated its body suddenly exploded. This was a method that Long Yu had comprehended when he first used the golden flame divine power. As he became more and more familiar with the golden flame divine power, he could exert the golden flame divine power in various forms, so that he could deal with various different situations. The golden flame divine power suddenly exploded, causing the white oracles to die instantly, without any possibility of survival. After all, these guys who were left behind didn't obtain any treasures. Although they had become demigods, their combat power was still a little inferior compared to the real elites of the two races, and they didn't have any special life-saving means at the critical moment. Then, Long Yu took out the divine mirror stone again, and with the golden flame divine power, he constructed a mirror city, directly enveloping one of the nature race. It was conceivable that the mirror city would directly explode in the next moment, and the golden flame divine power would fill the nearby void. The nature race, which had already been seriously injured and had burned its life force, would definitely be completely killed just like that, and not even its bones would appear in front of others. It was also at this moment that the purple oracles suddenly did something, and that was to devour the blue oracles next to it. Endless purple light suddenly burst out. The blue oracles didn't have time to react before they were directly devoured, and then the two actually began to fuse with each other. This was a method of forced fusion. For the oracles, it was very difficult for different colors to fuse with each other, because there would be mutual rejection and all kinds of side effects. Even if the fusion was successful, the newly fused individual wouldn't be particularly proficient in using the original power of the two colors. However, there was no other way now. The two god envoys watched as the white god envoys were killed in one move, and then the nature god envoys were killed by Long Yu. They knew that if they wanted to live, this was the only way out. In fact, they could indeed successfully escape. Just before Long Yu detonated the entire mirror city, they had already forcefully fused successfully. Then, with the terrifying power of the fusion, they instantly killed the remaining nature race. The nature race had already been seriously injured to begin with, and it couldn't resist the oracles after the forced fusion at all. Although there would be many sequelae in the future, the forced fusion of the oracles was extremely powerful now. After killing the nature race, the heads of the oracles race that were forcibly fusing with each other emitted a white light, indicating that they were about to leave this space. As long as 10 breaths passed, they would be able to leave this space alive. Only now did Long Yu manage to activate the golden flame divine power within Mirror City, causing it to explode out with a loud bang, killing the last remaining nature race beast. He could feel the terrifying power of the forcibly fused oracles. In a short period of time, it was already comparable to the power of his golden flame giant. Of course, the color of the Oracle clan that was forcibly fused had turned blue and purple, and its power was also in the process of rapidly weakening. Because it was forcibly fused, its power was not stable, and it was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. Long Yu didn't want to provoke this thing. If he was injured by the other party's terrifying power, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Anyway, the other party didn't have any treasures on him, so he could just let it leave. Long Yu glanced at the blue and purple light, then turned around and teleported thousands of meters away, escaping far away. Chapter 1578. Long Yu left the Oracle clan that was forcibly fusing. After all, it would be teleported out after 10 breaths. As for the side effects of this forced fusion on the Oracle clan, it was not something that Long Yu needed to pay attention to. In any case, it would definitely not feel good. For Long Yu, if there was any conflict with the Oracle clan in the outside world in the future, it would be beneficial. At the very least, the combat power of the Oracle clan that was forcibly fused was most likely not as good as that of the Oracle clan that was naturally fused. Long Yu glanced at his surroundings. Right now, in the entire spherical void, the 50 treasures on the first floor had all been taken away, and they had lost the dazzling starlight. These were all supreme-grade creations. Among them, Long Yu only obtained 4, which he gave to Consort Yu and the others to bring out. As for the outermost treasures, there was no way for Long Yu to fight for them. This was because no matter how strong he was only one person. And when this deathmatch began, nearly 200 aliens surged in from all directions. The supreme-grade creations that were scattered in all directions were basically the first to be taken away. After taking away the supreme-grade creations, more than half of the newly advanced alien demigods chose to withdraw. This made it impossible for Long Yu to fight for this portion of supreme-grade creations. However, the following situation was much better. Most of the newly advanced alien demigods would struggle for a period of time at the treasure point on the second floor, giving Long Yu a chance to fight for the treasures back. At this stage, Long Yu did not seize the opportunity, mainly because he happened to encounter Consort Yu and the others and fought for too long. However, next was the third floor's treasure point competition. For Long Yu, this was the time when he would gain the most. Now, it was also during this period of time. Basically, most of the alien races were near the treasure points on the third floor, fighting for these treasures, and the casualties were quite heavy. It was safe to say that there were no more than 50 newly advanced demigods left in the entire spherical void. Some of the strongest ones were probably aiming for the best prize in the death match, which was an advanced modified divine source item. Therefore, there should be many powerful foreign races in a standoff near the central treasure point. Of the remaining 50 new demigod aliens at most, more than half of them were guys who wanted more treasures because of their strength. Long Yu was most likely to run into such guys in the future. Generally speaking, these fellows already had the qualifications to leave this void. If they couldn't win, they could just run, so it was relatively safer. If Long Yu wanted to kill these guys, it would be quite difficult. Putting everything else aside, as long as the other party had a beginner-level modified divine source item, it would not be easy for Long Yu to kill him. No matter what, Long Yu could only continue to move forward. He had to fight until there was no one left in this space. Therefore, before that, he had to try his best to kill those new demigods of the alien races. If he killed them one by one, he would be able to get more treasures for himself. According to the current estimation, Long Yu could only keep a quarter of the 100 treasures, or even a fifth of them, under the premise that he couldn't guarantee the quantity. Of course, Long Yu had to strive for the quality of the treasures that were left. Long Yu was determined to get his hands on that high-grade, modified divine source artifact in the middle of the cave. He directly flew toward the center. He felt that if the newly advanced demigods were focused on rushing toward the center, they should be almost there. Since Long Yu was about 60,000 meters away from the center, he should be able to make it. As for the machinery race, the six-winged race, and the others behind him, Long Yu didn't bother to pay attention to them. If they wanted to chase after him, then go ahead. His speed was 10 times faster than theirs. It would be strange if they could catch up to him. However, what he needed to pay attention to was that Long Yu didn't want to be surrounded by these guys when he was fighting with the other alien races. Therefore, he had to be vigilant at all times during the battle. Once something approached within 30,000 meters of him, he had to use his soul sense to figure out the identity, movement, and intention of the other party. He kept approaching the center of the spherical void. On the way, he passed by a treasure point on the 4th floor, which was very likely to contain the source of divine runes of the eternal level. This thing might be very useful to other races, but for Long Yu, it was definitely not as useful as an advanced modified divine source item. After all, a divine source item could increase his strength by a lot, and the source of divine runes of the eternal level wouldn't make any qualitative changes to his combat ability. No matter what, Long Yu had to get his hands on that high-grade modified divine source artifact. In the center of the spherical void, there was definitely going to be a bloody battle. Long Yu was already mentally prepared for this. Right now, he was using the Golden Flame Divine Power Incarnation. Among all the creatures in this void, he was already the strongest existence. If he didn't dare to fight for it, then how could he have the face to obtain the Divine Spirit's inheritance of the eroding Moon Ancient region? Soon, the most central treasure point was right in front of him. Long Yu had originally appeared at the very center of this place. After circling around the periphery, he he ran back. However, he had gained quite a lot from circling around. He had even obtained a divine source artifact, the divine mirror stone, which had greatly increased his battle prowess. Most importantly, he had already ensured that Consort Yu and the others had safely left. Long Yu felt like a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. He could fight for the treasure with peace of mind and didn't need to worry about others. Although Lang Qingshuang had been killed, it couldn't be helped. It was already very good that 4 of them had escaped. After leaving the eroding moon ancient region this time, the overall strength of the human race and the demon race would definitely be a lot stronger. It must be noted that there weren't many new demigods among the alien races, such as the Ice God race and the Fire God race, who were near the human race. Before the demigod Gaudi left, he deliberately went to the nearby preparation areas to check. Unless the other party could hide, there were basically only 1 or 2 new demigods among the alien races. Although the total number of new demigods still exceeded that of the human race and the demon race, these alien races could no longer be counted as a race. Besides, the newly promoted demigods of the foreign gods might not necessarily be able to walk out of the life and death battle alive. Long Yu had already arrived within 30,000 meters of the most central treasure point. He began to check the situation in the field. What he saw surprised him, because at the center of the spherical void, there were more than 10 powerful alien races' new demigods confronting each other. The 10 or so powerful alien races' new demigods were roughly divided into 3 groups, of course according to the space. Long Yu saw an Ice God race, an Earth God race, and a Sword race. They were all in similar positions. They should have formed a temporary alliance. At the same time, there were 2 Abyss race. The Abyss race seemed to have done well this time. These 2 Abyss race were both extremely powerful. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the confidence to fight for the best treasure at the center. Long Yu could sense that one of the 2 Abyss race had obtained a beginner-level modified divine source item, which made Long Yu pay attention. If it was convenient to kill this guy later, he could kill it first and get that divine source item. Now, Long Yu realized that apart from God's spirit martial techniques, he had to use divine source items if he wanted to unleash more of the power of the golden flames. Therefore, these divine source items were also his main targets. Among them, there were even quite a few newly advanced demigods who had ultimate creations. At least 5 of them were gathered here. These guys had all run to the center without stopping after obtaining the ultimate creations at the outermost layer. That was why they could reach the center of the spherical space at this time. There wasn't much time left for Long Yu. As an inheritor, Long Yu could only try his best to get that advanced modified divine source item. This was already the worst result he could think of. If he couldn't get the best treasure this time, he would definitely suffer a great loss. He quickly observed the situation in the field. On the Langu Space Zone side, there was an Ice God, an Earth God, a Sword God, and 2 Abyss race, a total of 5 new demigods. On the Wild Sand Space Zone side and the Heavenly Dipper Space Zone side, there were 4 new demigods in total. Their strength was definitely not bad. It all depended on who performed well in the fight for the best treasure, who didn't perform well, who was targeted, and who was neglected. The situation was changing rapidly. When the difference in strength between each individual was not big, it was basically impossible to get the best treasure with 100% certainty. Of course, Long Yu was one of them. Long Yu's strength was above every single one of these new demigods. As long as he wasn't attacked by all of them, it was still very possible for him to get the treasure in the end. Before Long Yu approached the center of the space, these guys suddenly took action. It was the Earth God. The body of a new demigod from the Earth God clan was a huge stone ball. White light shone from the top of his head, which meant that he would be teleported out in 10 breaths. When the white light shone from the top of his head, he directly rushed to the center of the space, which was about 3,000 meters away from him, where the best treasure was. This guy wanted to get out of this space when he took the treasure so that he could get the best treasure in the entire space. This time, even the other alien races in the Langu Space Zone were not happy, especially the Sword God clan. The Sword God clan had given up a lot of other things to come to the center of the space just for the best treasure. How could he just watch the new demigod from the Earth God clan take it away? Chapter 1579. When the Earth God's head glowed with white light, and he dashed toward the best treasure in the center, the experts of the Langustar zone, including the Sword Race, took action at the same time. Since they were the closest to the Earth God, they naturally had to stop him from taking the best treasure. Although the newly promoted demigods of every star zone had formed an alliance subconsciously, it didn't mean that they were completely on the same side. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for anyone to monopolize the treasure. The newly promoted demigod of the Sword Race took action. Infinite sword light shot out from the void and cut off a part of the Earth God's soul. Then, that part of the soul was completely destroyed. It turned out to be a skill that directly attacked the soul. Another two members of the Abyss race took action at the same time. With their terrifying physical strength, they pressed toward the newly promoted demigod of the Earth God from two sides like a mountain. Their momentum alone was enough to stop that guy from moving toward the center. What happened next was nothing interesting to watch. This newly promoted demigod of the Earth God race was too naive. He wasn't very strong. He was just a little bit stronger than the other newly promoted demigods. He had relied on his fast speed to get here. However, if he really wanted to compete with the other newly promoted demigods, the Earth God race wouldn't be able to defeat them. Long Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, the treasure in the center hadn't been taken away. He remembered the scene when he had just come to this deathmatch space. At that time, he saw that the treasure in the center next to him was a puddle of golden divine water. Inside the golden divine water was the source of divine runes of eternal level. But now, the source of divine runes of eternal level had been moved to the treasure spot on the 4th floor. The one in the center had become a high-level modified quasi-divine source item. Long Yu observed for a while and found a reason. It turned out that the 5 treasure spots on the 4th floor, as well as the best treasure spot in the center, were all moving slowly. Moreover, when they were attacked, they would produce a powerful defensive barrier, making it difficult for them to be taken away. Long Yu walked around from the center to the outside, but he didn't pay attention to the location of the treasure spot in the center. Now, the location of the source of divine runes of eternal level had been changed with a high-level modified quasi-divine source item on the 4th floor. This situation was undoubtedly advantageous to Long Yu, because the longer it took for others to take away the treasures, the more time Long Yu had to protect these treasures. At this moment, the advanced modified demigod source item at the center of the treasure spot was still moving slowly. As the best treasure moved, the dozen or so new demigods of the alien races around it followed it closely. Long Yu discovered that during this process, a treasure from the 4th level was slowly approaching, as if it wanted to exchange places with the central treasure point, just like how the timeless divine rune sources had exchanged places with the high-level modified divine source treasure. The items that arrived at the central treasure point were definitely not ordinary items. However, Long Yu still couldn't see what that thing was. After all, it was more than 100,000 feet away from him. He couldn't even sense it with his spiritual sense. Long Yu kept rushing towards the center of the room where the high-grade, modified, divine source item was. At this moment, the new demigods around also noticed the arrival of the golden flame giant, but they didn't pay too much attention to it. The appearance of the golden flame giant was a bit unfamiliar, as if they had never seen it before. As a result, the new demigods were all wondering which star zone this golden flame giant came from. No one knew. The golden flame giant didn't belong to any star zone. It was an individual. Although Long Yu came from the Langustar zone, he wouldn't join hands with the new demigods of the alien races in a Langustar zone. His goal was to drive away all the people present here. Of course, before that, he had to wait for these guys to take out the treasure at the center. That way, Long Yu would be able to start snatching it away. After he snatched it away, he would be at ease. He wouldn't have to worry about the treasure being taken away by others. If he didn't keep the treasure with him, Long Yu wouldn't be able to rest easy. Every time he teleported, he would move forward 100 feet. Very soon, he would stop 2,000 feet away from the treasure point. The other new demigods found it a bit strange. Why did the golden flame giant stop there? Why didn't it join the camp of its own star zone first? However, when the new demigods of alien races were paying attention to the golden flame giant that Long Yu had turned into, another guy in the field started to move. It was a new demigod from the wild sandstar zone, a ball of red light. It was the Oracle clan. The red light on its body kept flashing, and the white light on its head also flashed. At this moment, it quickly moved toward the treasure point at the center. At the same time, the red light condensed into several arrow-like lights on its body and instantly swept toward the treasure point at the center. This was to destroy the defense barrier around the treasure point. Although it might not succeed, it was definitely necessary to attack when necessary. Among all the experts of the Oracle clan this time, this red Oracle clan could be counted as one of the strongest. Different from the guy from the Earth God clan, just now this Oracle clan had really strong combat ability. The guy from the Earth God clan just now had a part of his spirit and soul cut off by the expert of the Sword clan as soon as he attacked. Then, when he was dizzy, he was attacked by two members of the Abyss clan, and his body collapsed. But at this moment, when the red oracles began to attack, they had locked the other three new demigods from the wild sand space zone. The red light condensed into a cage that trapped them where they were, making it impossible for them to take action for a moment. This made the remaining 8 new demigods of alien races from the Heavenly Dipper space zone and the Langus space zone nervous. Finally, they rushed toward the center. The chaotic battle was about to begin. Long Yu slowly approached the center and finally stayed within a range of 10,000 zhong from the central treasure point. The other new demigods of alien races didn't know that this golden flame giant could teleport to a range of 10,000 zhong in one go. This was Long Yu's biggest trump card when the time came to attack, and it was also his biggest trump card if he wanted to snatch that treasure. The red light body of the Oracle clan quickly approached the central treasure point, and the red arrows it condensed were even faster. They directly fell on the defense barrier around the treasure point, bursting out terrifying, penetrating power and penetrating several holes in the defense barrier condensed by the golden flames. The red Oracle clan quickly approached. At the same time, a layer of red light barrier broke through the air around it in the central treasure point. This layer of red light barrier actually blocked all the other new demigods of alien races outside. The red arrows continued to condense and swept through the air, continuously penetrating and destroying the remaining golden flame barrier around the central treasure point. From the looks of it, it wouldn't take too long for the Red God Messenger clan to take away the treasure, which was the high-level modified divine source item. However, there were 8 new demigods of alien races outside. How long could the red light barrier resist them? Moreover, the 3 new demigods of alien races that were originally trapped in the wild sand space zone had finally broken the seal and were chasing toward the central treasure point. Under the joint attack of the 8 new demigods of alien races from the Langus space zone and the Heavenly Dipper space zone, the red light barrier only lasted for 2 breaths before cracks appeared on it. It was about to break. However, it was also at this moment that a scarlet light suddenly shone from the body of the Red Oracle clan. A mid-level modified quasi-divine source item came out of its body. It was a string of scarlet beads connected together, emitting a blood-like light, which looked extremely strange. When this mid-level modified quasi-divine source item appeared, the red light barrier around it was immediately added with a layer of scarlet color. It actually had an extremely terrifying defense ability. This quasi-divine source item is different from the previous ones. Long Yu's heart moved, and the golden flame giant also began to slowly move toward the center. His keen senses told him that the mid-tier modified divine source artifact that the Red God's Messenger clan had taken out was not obtained from this round of death battles. This was because the 5 treasure points on the 4th floor were still there and had not been taken away by anyone. In other words, this mid-level modified quasi-divine source item was brought in by the Red Oracle clan from the very beginning. If it died here, then this item would be taken back by the Corrosion Moon Ancient region as one of the rewards for the next opening of the Corrosion Moon Ancient region. However, how could an expert with a mid-level modified quasi-divine source item die in the Corrosion Moon Ancient region? Unless it was besieged by too many people. Even now, the defensive ability of the Red Light Barrier, which had been enhanced by the mid-grade modified Divine Source artifact, had skyrocketed. Originally, it was on the verge of breaking, but now it suddenly became impregnable. If this situation continued, then the treasure in the center might really be taken away by the Red Oracle clan. Since the mid-level modified quasi-divine source item that it activated, which was the scarlet string of 13 beads, was brought in from outside, then it must have some kind of compatibility with it. For example, the small golden sword that Long Yu obtained before could only unleash 1/10 of the power of this quasi-divine source item for the time being. Now that he had obtained the Divine Mirror Stone, if he wanted to truly unleash its power, he had to activate it with divine energy. Otherwise, he would have to spend a lot of time to get used to it. This Red God's messenger obviously couldn't have grasped any divine power, but it had spent a lot of time to get used to it. Right now, the power that it could carry out was far greater than that of the newly advanced demigods who had just obtained a demigod item. As a result, the Red Oracle clan's power was now far greater than that of the other new demigods. It was likely that the God Envoy clan that had left the Eclipse Moon Ancient region had given this divine source item to the Red God Envoy clan so that it could achieve a better result in the Eclipse Moon Ancient region this time. It did not fail its mission, and now it was about to take away the treasure in the center. Chapter 1580. The 8 new demigods from the Langia Space Zone and the Heavenly Dipper Space Zone were very anxious. They didn't expect that the Red Oracles would be so despicable as to bring in a mid-level modified quasi-divine source item and display a strength far beyond their current level. But in Long Yu's eyes, this situation was just right, because at this moment, the attention of all the new demigods nearby was focused on the Red Oracles. If one part was not handled well, the Red Oracles would suffer a great loss. And this was also an excellent opportunity for Long Yu to take action. If it were me, I would wait until the last stage and reveal my trump card, which is very likely to steal this treasure. Does this Oracles think that they are foolproof? Long Yu thought to himself, quite intrigued. If it weren't for him, the Red God's Messenger clan might have really succeeded and taken away the high-level modified Divine Source item. But unfortunately, the Golden Flame Giant that Long Yu had turned into had arrived. At this time, he was less than 500 meters away from the Scarlet Light Barrier. He raised his hand and gathered spiritual light. The Golden Flame Divine power condensed into a terrifying beam of light and fell on the Scarlet Light Barrier. The other 8 new demigods of the alien race were also bombarding the Scarlet Light Barrier, but they couldn't destroy it. Now that Long Yu took action, the Scarlet Light Barrier was immediately broken. The power of the Golden Flame Divine power that gathered spiritual light burst out with a terrifying penetrating force, which surprised all the new demigods of the alien race. However, this situation was a good thing for them, because it meant that the Red Oracles would not be able to take away the treasure in the center so easily. Long Yu directly blasted a hole in the Scarlet Light Barrier. Immediately after, the other 8 newly advanced demigods of the alien races continued to attack. Finally, the light barrier was completely torn apart. Then, they all flew towards the center. The other 3 new demigods of the alien race from the Wild Sand Space Zone also arrived and launched attacks at the Red Oracles. Before the demigod of the Oracles completely broke the golden fiery defense barrier around the treasure point, its crimson light barrier had already been broken, which was quite a surprise for it. At the same time, it grew wary of the golden fiery giant that Long Yu had turned into. It wanted to retreat a little so that it wouldn't become a target for everyone. However, the white light above its head told it that it absolutely couldn't retreat. Once it retreated, it would completely lose the chance to obtain the treasure in the center. If it left the central treasure, the other new demigods would certainly ignore it, but it would not be able to get the treasure. The treasure in the center was its biggest target, so it did not retreat. It wanted to fight one last time. Suddenly, 13 red lights appeared on the 13 scarlet beads beside it. They were the 13 clones of the red oracles. Of these 13 clones, 11 of them rushed toward the 11 new demigods of the alien race. The other 2 clones went straight to where the golden flame giant that Long Yu had turned into was. The red light instantly swept across the whole area. These 13 crimson beads were mid-tier modified divine source items. They had many powerful effects, and the ability to create doppelgangers was one of them. Of course, this effect required the owner of the divine source item to be very familiar with it before they could use it. It was also obvious that this guy had brought this kind of divine source item in from the outside. Otherwise, it would not have been able to perform such a trick. And the method of condensing these 13 clones was actually a bit stronger than Long Yu's Devil Dust clone. This was because these 13 clones of the Red God Emissary clan had the exact same strength as their original bodies. Furthermore, they didn't need to consume their own strength. In other words, after reaching the demigod level, there was no such thing as consuming power in the body. The 13 clones of the Oracle clan that were condensed in an instant blocked all the surrounding opponents, while the Red Oracle clan itself continued to condense red arrows and bombarded the golden flame barrier around the central treasure point. Just 2 seconds after the 13 clones were formed, the golden flame barrier was finally shattered. Then, the red oracles directly went to the center and stored the treasure in its own small world. In another 2 seconds, the white light above its head would directly take it out of this space. At this time, in order to obtain the treasure in the center, the other new demigods also risked their lives. The 2 members of the Abyss clan turned into 7 metal droplets. One of the metal droplets stopped the red clone of the God Emissary clan, while the other 6 metal droplets tore through space at a terrifying speed and attacked the Red God Emissary clan in the center. The newly promoted demigod of the sword race, on the other hand, turned into countless shadows of swords that pierced through the body of the clone of the Red Messenger and completely blew it up. That was the ultimate move of the sword folk. It used the power of eternally ranked god runes to form countless sword projections, and then used its strongest divinized god ability to break through the clone of the Red God Emissary. Then, the sword shadows broke through the void and fell from the sky, stabbing at the red oracles in the center. The new demigod of the Ice God clan could not break through the red oracle's blockade for a while, but it condensed the endless power of the Ice God clan. It was also the eternal level of the Ice God clan, which should have been comprehended in the eroding moon ancient domain this time. None of the new demigods who could persist to this place was weak. Even the inconspicuous new demigod of the Ice God clan had comprehended the power of the eternal level of the Ice God clan. The power of the Ice God clan instantly condensed into solid ice and snow, covering the entire area within a radius of 3,000 meters, completely turning it into a world of ice and snow. The power of the eternal level of the Ice God clan slowed down the demigod of the Red Oracle's movement by at least half. It was extremely clumsy if it wanted to use any defensive methods to resist the attacks of the Sword Clan and the Abyss Clan. The attacks of the 2 Abyss Clan arrived, and so did the Sword Clan as if they were gods of death. The 7 new demigods of the alien races in the Wild Sand Space Zone and the Heavenly Dipper Space Zone also used all kinds of methods. All kinds of divine symbols, divine spirit martial arts, and attacks of quasi-divinity source treasures surged toward the red oracles in the center from all directions. The oracles had already seen this coming, but as long as it could survive the last 2 seconds, the best treasure in the end would belong to it. It would be the biggest winner in the eroding moon ancient domain this time. Of course, that was just what it thought. The next moment, when there was only one breath left, the Red God Emissary was finally surrounded by endless attacks. All kinds of destructive means fell on his body, causing his red body to instantly turn into ashes. He didn't have the slightest ability to resist. However, the best treasure in the center didn't fall out. It appeared in front of the other new demigods. It was just an illusion. The new demigods around all realized what was going on, but there was only 1 second left. How could they find the guy? At this moment, only the golden fiery giant that Long Yu turned into remained calm. When the other new demigods of the alien races went to attack the red oracles, he didn't move. Instead, he focused all his attention on the perception of his soul, in case the enemy had any weird ways to escape. As it turned out, Long Yu was right. When the attacks of the other demigods fell on the red oracles, Long Yu clearly sensed that an invisible force dashed out from the center and quickly fled. It must be the real body of the red oracles that was hiding. Another ice-fire race from the wild sand space zone had the same keen senses as Long Yu did. Half of the ice-fire race's body was white ice, and the other half was red flames. Together, they formed an individual. They were from the wild sand space zone, just like the oracles and the nature race. The new demigod of the ice-fire race was the first to realize what was going on. He directly launched an attack at the hiding place of the red oracles. The power of the two completely different divine characters, ice and fire, completely exploded in the void. The pale white and the fiery red reflected each other, forming a violent vortex of ice and fire. This was a divinized god art, and it combined the power of 2 kinds of revelation-grade divine characters. Although they were only using the power of revelation-grade divine characters, the terrifying thing about the Ice-Fire tribe was that when the power of the divine characters of ice and fire intersected, under the control of their unique secret martial arts, they could explode with power that was several times greater. If it was the power of the engraved divine text, then it could explode with the power of the origin divine text. If it was the power of the revelation divine text, then it could explode with the power of the eternity divine text. It was hard to imagine that if an ice-fire tribe powerhouse could master an eternal ice attribute divine character and an eternal fire attribute divine character at the same time, what kind of strength would they be able to display by combining them? The swirl of ice and fire was created instantly, absorbing everything in the nearby space and baptizing them in the ice and fire. The red god emissary's true body was blasted out of the ice and fire maelstrom. Its entire body flickered with red light. Ancient divine characters were activated, and waves of red light spread out, constantly counteracting the power of the ice and fire divine characters that bombarded its body. If it went on like this, as powerful as the swirl of ice and fire was, it couldn't stop the oracles from being teleported out. It was also at this moment that Long Yu finally moved. Chapter 1581. When the new demigod of the ice and fire race couldn't break through the red oracles even with the power of 2 revelation-level divine characters of ice and fire, the golden flame giant that Long Yu turned into finally moved. He teleported to his opponent's side in an instant. Then, the power of the divine mirror stone was activated by the golden flame divine power. In an instant, a mirror city was formed. The golden mirror city completely enveloped the red god's emissary clan. Then, the golden flame divine power suddenly burst out. Endless golden flames burst out from the void, raising the temperature of the surrounding void. All the new demigods of the alien races nearby felt as if they had entered a purgatory. The terrifying heat almost melted them. It was not hard to imagine what the situation of the red oracles in the center of the mirror city was like. The golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into ignored the terrifying golden flame divine power whirlpool and directly stepped into it. He grabbed the advanced modified divine source item in one of the whirlpools. As for the red oracles themselves, the mid-level modified demigod source item that they brought in was taken back by the Eclipse Moon Ancient Realm. Originally, Long Yu was quite interested in the 13 dark red beads, but since they were taken back by the Eclipse Moon Ancient Realm, it was impossible for him to get them. Fortunately, he finally got the advanced modified demigod source item. After that, Long Yu directly teleported away without any hesitation. Just now, he used teleportation and moved hundreds of meters away in an instant. He must have been seen by the new demigods present. If he stayed, he would undoubtedly become a target for all. As strong as the Golden Flame Giant was, it was impossible for him to survive in front of so many new demigods. He could only hide for the time being. Although he wanted to kill the Ice God, the Sword Race, and the 2 Abyss Race, he was really not strong enough right now. It was very likely that the 4 of them would become formidable enemies for the development of the human race and the demon race in the future. It was not hard to imagine that the human race and the demon race would enter a period of development, and the foreign clans, such as the Abyss Clan and the Ice God Clan, would be the first to bear the brunt. By then, the Ice God Clan and the 2 new demigods of the Abyss Clan would probably cause great trouble for the human race and the demon race. After all, every demigod was a super expert. In the outside world, Long Yu was still just a little cultivator of the 5th phase Great Dominator level. He couldn't affect the battle between demigods at all. If he wanted to truly step into the realm of demigods, it would take him at least a year. As for the bottlenecks, there would not be any, because Long Yu was very certain that he had fulfilled all the conditions to become a demigod in advance. The key was the understanding of the power of time and the evolution of his deified techniques. Now, Long Yu had 3 divinized sacred arts. The 9 Serenities Ball had the effect of slowing down time. As long as he could absorb enough power of creation, it would be a piece of cake for him to step into the realm of demigods. Of course, he couldn't increase his level continuously, or the effect of the increase would not be good. Even if he had enough power of creation, it would still take at least a year for Long Yu to step into the realm of demigods. The Golden Flame Giant slipped away after obtaining the high-level modified quasi-divine source item, running far away. This almost made the dozen new demigods of the foreign clans want to vomit blood. They had waited for a long time, put in so much effort, and gave up so many other things for the opportunity to compete for this high-level modified quasi-divine source item. But now it was snatched away by someone else? How could this be? However, they could see that the Golden Flame Giant could teleport a distance of 10,000 meters in one go. After 2 teleportations, they could not sense the existence of the Golden Flame Giant at all. They could only see the golden figure of the Golden Flame Giant from afar, which was still moving away from them. They could not catch up. The speed of the Golden Flame Giant was so fast that they lost all thoughts of competing with it. At the same time, some people also started to wonder why this Golden Flame Giant had such a terrifying teleportation ability. Was this guy really a demigod who had just advanced during the trip to the Eclipse Moon Ancient Region? The terrifying power of the Golden Flame just now was still fresh in the memory of all the new demigods. No matter what, they could not burst out such terrifying power. For example, the demigod of the Ice Fire family. Its divine symbols of ice and fire were both of the enlightenment level. When they were combined, together with the deified techniques, it could have easily killed a new demigod. However, it had been blocked by the Red Oracles. It was obvious that the Red Oracles were very powerful. However, such a tyrannical divine envoy clan was actually instantly killed by the Golden Flame Giant in a single move. Many demigods started to suspect the identity of the Golden Flame Giant. However, no matter how they guessed, they could not guess the real identity of Long Yu. After losing the competition for the advanced, modified, divine source items, they all dispersed. However, they did not leave this space directly. They were really not willing to retreat just like that. Therefore, they dispersed in all directions and flew towards the remaining 4 treasure spots nearby. Just as they were fighting for the high-grade modified divine source items, one of the treasure points on the 4th floor that was 100,000 feet away had been taken away by someone, so there were only 4 left. The items in these 4 treasure points were also very good, so they wanted to fight for them. The Golden Flame Giant flew toward one of the treasure spots. The demigods of different races from the 3 space zones, on the other hand, flew to the other 3 treasure spots. They did not want to run into the golden fiery giant again. Even the red messengers, who carried mid-level modified divine source items, had been killed by the golden fiery giant. If they ran into it, they would definitely be killed. Therefore, they all flew toward the other 3 treasure spots. Longy did not know what was in the treasure spot he was flying toward. He hoped that it would be the source of the divine rune of the eternal level. In that case, if he could obtain the source of the divine rune this time, his trip to the eroding moon ancient region would be completely perfect. However, he soon discovered that there were 3 new demigods of alien races fighting over the treasure spot he was flying toward. Even from 100,000 feet away, he could sense that the treasure on this treasure spot was a mid-grade, modified, divine source artifact. He didn't know what it was exactly, but he could only break the golden defensive barrier of the treasure spot. It was impossible for Long Yu to break the barrier and take the treasures inside. He could only ask the other new demigods to break the barrier first. Therefore, Long Yu was destined to be the Oriole behind the mantis and hunt the new demigods who had obtained the treasure. After he reached 10,000 meters away, the 3 new demigods of alien races could see the figure of Long Yu's golden flame giant. Therefore, Long Yu began to move forward 100 meters at a time, slowly teleporting. In any case, the 3 demigods of alien races seemed to be in a stalemate for a long time before they began to attack the golden barrier around the treasure spot. The arrival of the golden flame giant clearly made the 3 demigods of alien races a little nervous. Among the 3 of them, one of them was actually a soul race. If it were not for Long Yu's powerful spiritual sense, he would not have been able to detect its existence at all. However, the other 2 were close, so they clearly knew of the existence of this new demigod of the soul race. There were also 2 other aliens, one of which was a 15-meter-long fish. One of the poor fellows of this race had been killed by Long Yu in the advancement area. He had thought that this race was not strong, but he did not expect that there would be a powerful existence that could persist until now and participate in the fight for the treasure spot on the 4th floor. There was another alien race being that was made up of countless black spheres. They looked like building blocks that had been stacked together. This was the 7-ball race. The body of the 7-ball race was formed by 7 black spheres, hence their name. There are some records of this race in the Demigod College. This race was best at the power of the divine text of the shadow attribute, and they were very good at stealth and stealth methods. 7-ball race, 15-meter-long fish race, soul race. When the 3 new demigods of alien races saw the appearance of the golden flame giant, they made almost the same reaction, which was to attack the golden barrier of the treasure spot. Originally, they were in a stalemate, considering whether or not they should deal with the other 2 fellows first, and then slowly break the golden barrier of the treasure spot after killing them. However, when the golden flame giant appeared, they knew that if they continued their stalemate, it was very likely that there would be one more competitor. If they could take care of the other 2 opponents within 100 breaths, then they would not need to deal with the 3rd opponent, which was beneficial to them. After all, one more opponent meant one more risk. They worked together to attack the golden barrier of the treasure spot. As for who would obtain the treasure, it would depend on their own means. In any case, they had to break the golden barrier first. Seeing this, Long Yu sped up a little. Originally, he could teleport 100 zhang at a time. Now, he could teleport 120 zhang at a time. Gradually, he could teleport 150 zhang at a time. In this way, the other party might not be able to detect his increase in speed. After all, the other party could only see him with their naked eyes, and the ability to distinguish things that were 10,000 zhang away with their naked eyes was very weak. In this deathmatch space, the new demigods could only sense things within 10,000 zhang with their spiritual senses. Things beyond that could only be sensed with their naked eyes and could not be sensed with their spiritual senses. Therefore, Long Yu gradually increased his speed and flew up, not attracting the attention of the 3 new demigods. When Long Yu was only 15,000 zhang away from the treasure spot, The golden barrier outside the treasure spot was finally broken. Go! Without any hesitation, Long Yu began to teleport with all his strength, moving 10,000 zhang at a time, and began to rush in the direction of the treasure spot. At this time, the three demigods did sense the abnormality of the golden flame giant, but it was already too late. In 5 breaths' time at most, Long Yu would be able to approach them, and by then, they would need at least 5 breaths' time to be able to retreat from this space. Chapter 1582. Long Yu had grasped this timing perfectly, causing the 3 demonic beings to feel as though they were in a dilemma. However, they had no other choice. Almost at the same time, a white light appeared above their heads, indicating that the 3 aliens had chosen to retreat at the same time. They had clearly sensed the abnormality of the golden flame giant, and the vigilance in their hearts allowed them to make the most accurate decision. Of course, they would not give up on the treasure just like that. The 3 of them flew toward the light where the treasure was almost at the same time. Then, the 7-ball race was a little faster. The power of their world enveloped the treasure and stored it in their little world. The 50-meter-long fish god and the soul race attacked the 7-ball race at almost the same time. The power of the wind, elemental revelation, divine text exploded from the 50-meter-long fish god, forming 3 terrifying hurricanes that swept toward the 7-ball race from 3 different directions. The soul race used a mental shockwave to directly attack the 7-ball race. The 7 pitch-black spherical bodies of the 7-ball race instantly emitted an eternal-level shadow divine text, forming a powerful defensive barrier. This defensive barrier not only blocked the 3 terrifying hurricanes, but it also blocked the mental shockwave of the soul race, so the 7-ball race's main body did not suffer any damage. However, the next moment, the golden flame giant had already arrived. The golden flame divine power quickly condensed on the spot, and the golden mirror city formed once again, enveloping the 7-ball race within it. This situation caused the soul race and the 50-meter-long fish god to retreat. They could both sense the terrifying aura coming from the mirror city, and they had a feeling that if they stayed where they were, they would very likely be affected by this attack. Although they really wanted to take away the treasure from the 7-ball race's demigod, it was not as important as their own lives. The golden mirror city exploded the next moment. The golden flame divine power had already erupted, and the 7-ball race's demigod could not withstand it at all. The treasure directly fell out, but apart from Long Yu, no other alien race could enter the center of the explosion to obtain the treasure. The golden flame giant directly teleported over and took the treasure away, but he did not leave just like that. He teleported to the side of the demigod of the soul race and smashed his fist with the divine power of golden flames. The demigod of the soul race did not expect that the fiery giant would hate him so much that it would attack him directly. He was immediately panicked, but he still came back to himself very soon. He activated his pure mental power and formed a shield to protect himself. It was a pity that regular demigods couldn't resist the power of the golden flames at all. Just one punch was enough to shatter the soul race's mental barrier. Then, the next punch landed on the soul race's mental body. Obviously, Long Yu could not kill him with a single punch. However, he immediately used the gathering spirit light. This divine martial technique condensed a golden flame divine power that tore through the air and pierced through the entire soul's spiritual body. The new demigod of the soul race was dead. Long Yu mainly considered that the soul race was quite close to the human race and the demon race's territory. Moreover, it was right next to the Void Star River. Therefore, he wanted to take advantage of the fact that he still had the ability to kill them and directly kill them to avoid future troubles. As for the new demigod of the fish race, Long Yu also wanted to kill him, but unfortunately, there was no time. When he just finished killing the new demigod of the soul race, 10 breaths had passed. The new demigod of the fish race was directly enveloped by the white light and sent out of this space by the eroding moon ancient realm. So far, Long Yu had obtained another treasure and killed a new demigod of the soul race. The results were not bad. Of course, after such a short period of time, the starlight on the other 3 treasure spots had all dimmed. Clearly, the new demigods of the alien races had already started fighting over them. Long Yu flew toward the nearest treasure spot, but it was already too late. The nearest treasure spot was 60,000 meters away from him. It would take him 10 breaths to get there, but it was very likely that the battle would be over in 20 breaths. In the end, Long Yu gave it a try. However, he was still unable to make it in time. Before he could reach the location of the treasure, the demonic humans there had either died or retreated. Naturally, the treasure had also disappeared. Long Yu could only sigh. There didn't seem to be many newly advanced demigods left in the spherical void where the battle of life and death began. The treasure points were almost dim, too. There were only a few treasure spots that no one was fighting over, and they were quite far away from Long Yu. They were at least 50 to 60,000 feet away. He wanted to go and take a look, but he did not have the chance, because the news from the eroding moon ancient realm made him stop. The death battle this time had officially ended. Except for Long Yu, the other new demigods of the alien races had all left this void. This surprised Long Yu a little bit. Weren't the 6-winged race and the machine race chasing after him with great joy? Why are they all gone now? If that golden 6-winged race knows my identity, the 6-winged race, the machine race, and the sword race are very likely to attack the territory of the human clan and the demon clan soon. Long Yu thought of such a possibility, and it was very likely. In that case, the human clan and the demon clan would not be able to resist at all. The only good thing was that the territory of the human clan and the demon clan was at the edge of the Langus space zone. It would still take a long time to go from the center to the edge. Besides, there were many other alien races in the middle, and the 3 alien races might not be able to pass through easily. Besides, even if the 3 alien races attacked the human clan and the demon clan, there was still a grudge between them. It was impossible for them to be united. Also, it was impossible for them to send all their forces to attack the territory of the human clan and the demon clan. In that case, the human clan and the demon clan, who had improved their overall strength, might be able to resist the attack from the 3 alien races. What troubled Long Yu the most was that the position of the Void Galaxy seemed to be on the way of the 3 alien races' attack on the human clan and the demon clan. In that case, wouldn't the Void Galaxy bear the brunt of the attack? I'll think about it when I get back. Long Yu shook his head and didn't think too much about it. It was useless to make such meaningless guesses right now. The actual situation might be completely different from what he had imagined. All in all, Long Yu gained a lot from this death battle. That was because there were still quite a number of treasures and stars left in the void. These remaining treasures all belonged to Long Yu alone. However, before long Yu could even check the treasures that he had obtained, his vision suddenly turned black, and he fainted. Outside of the eroding moon ancient region, in the area where the human clan and demon clan were preparing, Long Yu's figure appeared in front of Consort Yu, Frost, Imperial Wind, and Long's Ition. At this time, he also regained consciousness. Of course, what he was most concerned about was the treasures he had obtained during the deathmatch segment. He hurriedly checked his small world and discovered that all the remaining treasures, including the high-grade modified Divine Source artifact, were in his small world. He immediately let out a sigh of relief. It's over. A smile appeared on his face. When Consort Yu and the others saw that Long Yu had appeared, they were also happy. They were originally worried about Long Yu. Now that Long Yu had finally appeared, it had to be said that it was a perfect ending. Even though Wolf Qing Shuang had died, there was nothing they could do about it. All in all, in this trip to the eroding moon ancient region, the human clan and demon clan had obtained many things. Their greatest achievement was that 5 of them stepped into the demigod level and made it out alive from the life and death matches. Every demigod was the most precious treasure of every race. Now that the human clan and demon clan had 5 demigods, the 2 clans' power had greatly increased. However, there was something strange. The 5 demigods that had successfully stepped into the demigod realm were all humans. The only new demigod Wolf Ching Shuang of the demon clan had died in the death battle. This could only be called a coincidence. Long Yu did a quick count of the treasures in his little world. There was a total of 14 treasures, including the high-level modified divine source item and the middle-level modified divine source item. There were also 12 other treasures in his little world. In addition to the 4 high-quality creations that Consort Yu and the others had brought out, there were almost 20 of them, which was 1/5 of what he had. Without a doubt, the biggest winner of the eroding Moon Ancient region this time was Long Yu's group. As for Long Yu, he was the winner of the Ying family. The result is not bad. However, this time, we are likely to provoke the 6-winged race. Everyone, be careful. Long Yu said to everyone. Okay. Consort Yu nodded and said, no matter what, we have a lot of demigods now. After we go out, our overall strength will rise to a higher level. For the time being, let's not rush to expand. After all, the situation has not stabilized yet. Your identity may be known by some powerful alien demigods. That was what he was afraid of. What Long Yu was most worried about was the golden 6-winged race. In the death battle void, the machinery clan and the 6-winged race led by the golden 6-winged race didn't continue to chase after them. Obviously, they had retreated. They retreated not because they had given up on finding trouble with Long Yu. It was because they had thought it through. Instead of fighting the golden flame giant in the death battle void, they might as well find trouble with the human race after they got out. In comparison, the latter was much easier than the former. As long as the armies of the 3 clans arrived, the entire human race would be destroyed without any suspense. The eroding Moon Ancient region had ended. For Long Yu, the overall situation didn't make him feel relaxed. Instead, he became even more nervous. Chapter 1583. Through the ancient space-time teleportation array, the 5 of them were teleported back to the Demigod Academy near the territories of the human race and the demon race. This time, a total of 400 people from the human race and the demon race participated in the eroding Moon Ancient domain, but in the end, less than 250 people made it back alive. It could be said that the loss was extremely great. If no demigod made it back in the end, then this trip to the eroding Moon Ancient domain will be a huge loss for the human race and the demon race. Red Oriole and Moon Song were looking forward to it. They were very confident in Long Yu. However, in the last segment of the battle to the death, he would have to fight against so many powerful newly ascended demigods of the foreign races. Could Long Yu really make it? In the past few days, Red Oriole and Moon Song were extremely worried about Long Yu. They even neglected their own cultivation. For Red Oriole, Long Yu is her man. For Moon Song, Long Yu is her very good friend. In fact, it was completely because of Long Yu's help that she was able to reach her current cultivation level so quickly. From Long Yu, Moon Song saw a glimmer of hope. This female demigod of the heavenly bat demon race also had high hopes for Long Yu, especially when the newly ascended demigods were born. When she saw Long Yu appear bathed in golden light with the cultivation of a 5th phase great sovereign, she knew that Long Yu was destined to be different from the others. It was very likely that the human race would rise completely because of him. This was not impossible. Usually, the rise and fall of a race was because of the rise and death of an individual. In this star region, such things were not uncommon. It was unknown how many times it had happened. Take the 6-winged race, for example. It was also because an extremely terrifying genius once appeared that the 6-winged race defeated all the opponents in the central region of the Langistar region. That was how the 6-winged race rose to its current height. After thinking about it day and night, Long Yu finally appeared. Consort Yu, Frost, Imperial Wind, and Long Zai Tian also appeared. There were 4 demigods in total. This scene made all of the human and Yao cultivators in the mission hall cheer. At this moment, the students of the demigods were no longer hostile to each other because of their factions. Many experts of the human clan and the demon clan who had been hostile to each other in the past also let go of their hatred and cheered for demigods. The human race and the demon race had 4 more demigods. On the other hand, Long Yu, who was behind the 4 demigods, still only had the cultivation of a 5th-stage great ruler. He seemed very inconspicuous, and not many people knew that this inconspicuous little guy was actually the most important one among them. Red Warbler. When Long Yu saw the beauty who had raised her head in anticipation, he didn't think of anything else. He crossed the crowd and ran over to her, pulling her into his arms. This time, he really did hug Red Warbler. This situation was different from before, because now, Long Yu could finally be sure that he could beat this little demon. From the time he met Red Warbler to the time before they entered the eroding moon ancient region, Red Warbler's martial realm had always suppressed Long Yu's. This also meant that her battle strength was definitely not much lower than Long Yu's. But now, Long Yu could be sure that he could suppress her. This was good news. At least for Long Yu, this meant that he could do whatever he wanted in certain special circumstances. Cough, cough. When he thought of this, Long Yu actually blushed a little for some reason. On the side, Moonsong watched the 2 of them hug and didn't disturb them, even though this pair looked a bit strange. Humans were humans, and demons were demons. However, even though Red Warbler was a demon cultivator, the relationship between her and Long Yu couldn't be faked. When Long Yu and the 4 demigods returned, the Demigod Academy was filled with a wild celebration. In the past, every time the eroding moon ancient region ended, the humans and demons had never celebrated like this, because this was the only time the humans and demons saw some hope of rising again. Of course, in the midst of the celebration, many people were still in a bad mood. This even included Long Zai-Tian, who had stepped into the demigod realm. This was because, even though the eroding moon ancient region had been a fruitful trip, so many people had died. Among them was Long Zai-Tian's longtime good friend, Qi Beifei. So much so that there was another hidden relationship between Long Zai-Tian and Qi Beifei that no one knew about. Qi Beifei's death made Long Zai-Tian depressed, so he kept drinking. Long Yu took a moment to look at Long Zai-Tian and slightly narrowed his eyes. During the death match, Long Zai-Tian's combat power far exceeded that of a regular new demigod. It could be seen that Long Zai-Tian also had a lot of secrets, and these secrets were very likely related to his disappearance and amnesia. Apart from amnesia, there were definitely many things that Long Zai-Tian didn't tell Long Yu. But it didn't matter. In any case, he didn't have any feelings for his father. At most, it was for his mother, Bei Yuyao. Now, Bei Yuyao had also started her own life in the Void Galaxy and was constantly working hard in her cultivation. Anyway, for the time being, there was no need for Long Yu to care about Long Zai-Tian. He slightly counted the 14 treasures he had obtained. A high-grade modified divine source artifact. He was definitely going to use it for himself. Every time the Eclipse Moon Ancient Region dropped a treasure of this grade, it would be able to increase his strength by a lot. There was also a mid-level modified divine source item. After thinking for a moment, Long Yu directly gave it to Red Oriole. Of the remaining 12 items, 3 of them were beginner-level modified divine source items, or rather, beginner-level source items would do. These 3 beginner-level source items were also very valuable items. To Long Yu, it was impossible for him to give them away so easily. At the very least, Moonsong and Consort you had to have 1 each. Although this time, everyone had obtained a lot of good things in the eroding moon ancient region, the real good things were still in the treasures that Long Yu had obtained at the end. There were also 3 divine rune origins. This was much easier to distribute. He could directly give 1 to the human race, 1 to the demon race, and 1 to the Void Galaxy. The divine rune origins were still relatively important to the human race and the demon race. In the past, the human race and the demon race didn't have the divine rune origins. As a result, whether it was the human race or the demon race, it was very difficult for them to comprehend a divine rune origin. But now that they had 3 divine rune origins, the strength of many human race and demon race experts would rise to a new level. Of course, the amount of energy that the divine rune origins could produce at one time was limited. Not everyone could have the opportunity to comprehend it. However, the human race and the demon race were only supported by the powerful elites. The remaining 6 treasures were a bit more complicated. Among them, there were 2 supreme-grade creation items that Long Yu hadn't decided on who to give to. After absorbing these items, those with high talent could break through the demigod threshold. Simply put, it was very likely that 2 demigods would be created. If there were no accidents, Long Yu would give one of them to Red Oriole. The other one would depend on Moonsong. If Moonsong was willing to return to the Void Galaxy with him to develop, then it would be excellent to give the other one to her. If Red Oriole and Moonsong could both step into the demigod realm in a short time, the strength of the entire Void Galaxy would become much stronger. There are also 4 treasures. Among them, there were 2 pills with unknown effects, a gray stone with mysterious patterns carved on it, and a cultivation method of the ancient god forbidden technique. For the time being, Long Yu didn't know the effects of the 2 pills. He would have to go back and let Liao Lele appraise them first. He didn't know what the mysterious patterns on the gray stone were, but Long Yu knew that they were of the same nature as the patterns he had engraved in his head before. However, the patterns in his head seemed to have been fully engraved, and he couldn't engrave the mysterious patterns in it anymore. As for the ancient god-forbidden technique, Long Yu didn't even understand the 4 symbols death prison, so he couldn't be bothered to care about it. He could only store it for now or give it to Concubine Yu, Red Oriole, and Moon Song to try comprehending it. After all, the cultivation method of the ancient god-forbidden technique wasn't limited to one person. Everybody could try to see it, but whether or not they could successfully cultivate it depended on their own understanding and talent. As for the gray stone, Long Yu had to figure out what it was before he decided who it should belong to. It was very likely that it was another good item that could enhance his strength. Then, he would have to use it himself. Only his own strength could make him feel at ease. Long Yu didn't participate in the carnival held by the Demigod College, because he was very pressed for time. He had to digest the power and treasures he had obtained from the eroding Moon Ancient region as soon as possible and turn them into his own strength as much as possible. Then, he would return to the Void Galaxy to organize another wave. Next, he had to prepare to deal with the threat from the alien races, mainly the Golden Six-Wing clan. That guy gave Long Yu a very strong feeling of threat. It was very likely that the Six-Wing clan, the Machine clan, and the Sword clan were already discussing how to attack the Human clan. There wasn't much time left for Long Yu. At least, if it was possible, he wanted to stop the armies of the 3 races in the Void Galaxy. This was not impossible. As long as he could prepare as soon as possible, with the overall strength of the Human clan and the Demon clan, it was still possible to stop the other races near the Void Galaxy. Anyway, the 3 races couldn't attack the Human clan with all their strength. Long Yu returned to his personal space by himself. Then, he began to study the high-grade source artifact. The Dark Flame Ghost was a high-grade modified quasi-divine source item. It was an iron chain wrapped in black flames. The shape of the iron chain was not fixed and could be long or short. It contained the power of some kind of ancient divine character. Unfortunately, Long Yu couldn't comprehend it yet. He could only use this high-grade source item for the time being. For him, even if he could only use 1/10 of the Dark Flame Ghost's power, it would be enough for him to beat all existences below the demigod realm. Even if he encountered some weaker demigods, he could use the Dark Flame Ghost to deal with them. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.